Mr. Simon,
Here.
Ms. Harris,
Here.
Mr. Caulfield,
Here.
and Mr. Sullivan.
Here.
We have the minutes of the April 17th meeting. I have a couple of corrections on page 2, lines 2 and 3, actually lines 1 and 3. It should say Mr. Harrison recused himself from the resolution consideration, and then Mr. Sullivan introduced the resolution, and then on line 3 with Mr. Harrison and Mr. Moore abstaining. And then on page 3, line 23 in the middle, it says he stated that the 1-inch separation, you there? And then at the end of that sentence, on some of the plans. And then on page 7, the condition 4, I forget the wording because I did, just so it's clear where the side walkway is going, after the word installed, put on the sides of the houses opposite the driveway. And I don't have any other changes to the minutes. Anyone else with any changes? Someone want to move the minutes with those changes?
I'll move the minutes as amended.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
You can't. You weren't here. Mr. Affronti wasn't here, so we can't second. Second. Thanks.
All in favor, say aye. Abstentions? And then we have the Zeltzer resolution. I don't have any changes. Does anyone else have any changes? Someone want to move the resolution?
So moved.
Second, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Abstentions? And we have the resolution for the Shrek development. The same change to condition 4. I don't have any other changes. Does anyone else have any changes? Someone want to move the resolution as amended? Is there a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Abstentions? Then we have the request for an extension. Graham, do you know what the status is? The letter requesting it said that the planning, design, and permit application will be completed by a year from now, but we gave them 1 year extension. Do you have any idea where they are?
I believe the applicant is here this evening. So if the board has any questions, you can certainly direct them to them. So, if you'd like to come up. No, this is Davies. Yeah. Sorry.
Yes, unfortunately, we hadn't moved very much forward.
Let me just swear you in. Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
Yes.
State your name and address, please.
Alexander Davies, 349 Park Street.
Thank you.
Just where do things stand?
Well, I now have my mother in a nursing home. My brother will be taken care of. He has cerebral palsy. We can move forward.
Okay, so do you think by next April you'll be able to?
Yeah, I'm from Canada, so I've been going back and forth to Canada to take care of my mom and my brother. And it's just put a huge, we couldn't really get together, my architect and I, very much, so now she's in a nursing home, she's taken care of. I can actually be here, and now we can actually meet and get things going.
Any questions or comments from members of the board? Someone want to make a motion concerning the extension?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then just one other housekeeping thing before we start with the applications. Graham handed out a draft of a demolition review ordinance that the Township Council has requested members of the zoning board look at, and he's requested that you give him any comments on it by May 29th, and if you could do that, and we will consolidate the comments If there are diverse comments, we'll discuss it. We're going to have our special meeting on June 3rd because we have lots of
June
applications.
5th.
June 5th. We can discuss it then. If there are no comments or everyone says the same thing, we'll just pass it on. But if people are saying different things, we'll discuss it on June 5th. Okay, the first application is that is TFK Property Management LLC for property at 651 Grove Street. This is an application for a variance to construct a front porch addition. The property is in the R1 one-family zone. The property is designated on the township tax maps as Lot 11, Block 3,706. A variance is requested from Montclair Code Section 347-45B1 to permit a minimum front yard setback for interior lots of less than the required average front yard setback for the 4 nearest principal structures. Are taxes paid, and is the notice in order?
Yes.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
Yes.
State your name and address, please.
Juan Bilaro, 651 Grove Street, Montclair.
And
Have a
you
seat,
can
speak into the
be
mic.
seated if you want, and tell us what you're doing. I mean, I've been watching the house being renovated for a period of time now, but describe what you're doing with the porch.
I did the one next door on 649. So the house is larger in width than it originally was, so we're trying to expand the porch to complement the look of the house. And the architect did the calculations, and he said it should work according to the house next door, both properties 649 and 653. And there's a property 650 Grove Street that's across the street. It's in deeper, but it has the same scenario that I'm going for with the porch a little wider. It's the original porch is the same amount of in length coming from the front of the property. We're just making it longer. So we're not going further. We're just making it longer to complement the facial. Because the porch is not in the center, it's all the way to the left. And if we keep the existing porch, then it's just going to not look right. So I'm just applying for a variance to get that done.
Is your microphone on?
Can you hear me? Oh, speak up. So we're applying for the variance to make the porch, it's too loud now, it makes the porch a little wider. We're not going further than the existing porch, we're just making it wider now because the house, the renovation calls for it to appeal to the facial of the property. The porch, existing porch that's there now is too far to the left, and we didn't center it, so we want to make it longer, keeping it the same distance from the front of the house, just making it wider.
Are there questions from members of the board?
Are you making this longer across the facade or deeper across the facade?
Well, it's going longer across the facade. It's not going out. So from the sidewalk, the setback line is 25 feet, and when the architect measured it, he said it's somewhere around 21 feet, which is where the existing porch is now.
So what you're going to cover...
21.7, sorry.
The porch will cover those 2 windows here?
Yes, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to cover the windows, just the windows in the front that we have there now, just so to give a better curb appeal. The house is larger than it was, so the smaller porch is really, it's not going to look good at all. And again, it's the same setback as the existing porch, but we're just covering the windows on a lower level.
So, okay, Mr. Simon.
The 2 windows, this was part of a new addition?
No, the addition was in the rear. The addition, we did an attached 2-car garage and made the kitchen bigger. So the front is existing, except for the right-hand side, second floor. The property had an arch, and we just made the property.
So the first floor, the width didn't change from before the construction, you just added on top.
Yeah.
The porch was always shorter.
Yeah, the porch is always shorter. Do I have an existing picture of the porch here? No, there's no existing picture, but the porch ended right where the two columns are in the front door. That's the existing porch. The two columns, it ended right there at the column to the right. And that was it. So we just want to make it wider. Again, it's the same setback as the original porch. We're not going further than that. We're just covering the windows on the first floor level.
So I take it this has already taken place based on the photos? This
Well,
has already happened?
Well, we didn't do anything with the foundation. The roofer was supposed to do the porch on the side, the roof on the side porch, and he started the roof in the front. So, okay. Yeah, all right. So yeah, there's a side porch that, I don't know if you can see where the wood is at. He was supposed to do the roof there, and he did the roof in the front. And actually, it's going to be a metal roof. It's not going to be shingles, so that all has to come down. We're doing a metal roof in the front.
But the extent of the roof shown in these photos is the extent that you're proposing?
Yes.
And just for the record, Mr. Reynolds has arrived.
And so what existed was where the steps come up, and was the width of the porch, and it was a little wider than the stairs are, but that was approximately what was there previously. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then you're extending it over further, but the same width, depth, whatever you want to use, from the house as what pre-existed going to the stairs. Is that
Exactly.
correct?
Keeping the original setback.
And the only, you're actually encroaching slightly more because the house is at a slight angle to Grove Street. So by going straight across, it actually gets closer to Grove Street by a little bit.
Yeah, I think the architect measured where he has the line on the, what is this? The survey. He has 21.7.
Right,
And
well, he has on
the original is 23. Yeah.
He has on the zoning schedule that what existed on that side, 23.33, and
Yeah.
then by extending it further, you're going to 21.58 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from members of the board? Is there anything, let's start. Are there any members of the public who have any testimony, questions, anything whatsoever you want to say about this application? Yes, you want to come forward?
Right here. Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
Yes, I do.
State your name and address, please.
Jennifer Hunter, 647 Grove Street. My concern is if this property is going to be extending out, as you say, closer to Grove Street, because renovations were done on the other house as well as this, where the extension in the back now has me looking at a wall when I'm in my kitchen. Because they went back that far, it cuts off all the view that I had before. So if I'm coming out to the front of the house, I want to know if I'm going to see the same block that I moved into, because these are places that are going to be sold. The person is not going to be occupying it. It's not for really for their convenience. But they've altered what I purchased, or the views I've had, and I'm just left there to look at that.
Okay, so your house, he renovated two houses.
Right.
Your house is next to the one he renovated
The first one, yeah.
Correct.
And that went out 26 feet or more, like to the back. So the kitchen window, I always could see my neighbors, if they were coming or going, I could see trees and all. I just look at a wall because the house goes out that far. And I'm wondering about my sight lines now in the front.
So the only thing he is doing on this house, let me step back.
Mm-hmm.
Because the properties are very deep, his required setback from the rear is pretty far back, so that's why he was able to, on both houses, expand the house to the rear without needing a variance from us.
Yeah, I understand that.
But on this house, all he's doing that requires our action is making the front porch a little longer than it is now. It's basically doubling the width, the length of the
So it's
front
not going
porch
out
across.
toward the street, it's going,
Right, it's going,
Up and down the
what's
block.
before us is going towards Grove Street.
okay. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who have questions, comments, statements, anything they want to say about the application? Is there anything further you want to say before we discuss and vote on the application? This is your last chance to say whatever.
Oh, no, I'm just excited to get these projects done and over. So, whatever the resolution is today, I'm truly grateful for the decision and just move forward.
We'll start discussion, Mr. Caulfield.
Thank you, Chair. So, looking at your house in relations to your neighbors, obviously your house is the closest. It's closer to Grove than the other houses in that area, it looks like, from the map here. So I can see like the encroachment of that porch. I mean, I'm in favor of it. The need for it, I don't necessarily see the need for this, but I'm in favor of the application going forward. Thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Harris.
I have no objection.
Mr. Simon.
I'm also in favor.
Mr. Franti.
Also in favor.
Mr. Church.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Mr. Moore.
I'm also in favor. I don't foresee this being a detriment to the community. If anything, I think it'll certainly be an asset. So, great job.
Thank you.
Mr. Allen.
I'm in favor.
Mr. McCullough.
In favor.
I'm also in favor. I've been watching you do the two houses for, I'm sure you feel like it's an even longer time. I think that that's a significant improvement over what was there. I think this is resulting in a minor encroachment. I think what was there before was just basically an entryway to the house, and now it'll be at least a usable area that people can sit and watch traffic on Grove Street or whatever. I don't think this will result in a substantial detriment to the public good or substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan, since you're continuing with the line of the porch that existed. Someone want to make a motion?
Motion to approve?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
The next application is that of Paul and Catherine Godino for property at 121 Summit Avenue. This is an application for a variance to construct a rear addition to the existing dwelling. The property is in the R11 Family Zone District. The property is designated on the township tax maps as Lot 42 and Block 3506. A variance is requested from Montclair Code Section 347-45C 4B to permit a maximum building width greater than 65% of the width of the lot frontage. Are taxes paid, and is the notice in order?
Yes.
Would both of you raise your right hands? You swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
I do.
State your names and addresses, please.
Paul Godino, 121 Summit Avenue, Montclair.
Eric Schultz, 35 Alexander, Montclair.
Okay, you can be seated unless you'd like to stand, which,
Again, I'm the architect for the project.
And you're a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
If you have the drawings set out, start with A0, the plot plans out, easy place to start. We are proposing an addition to the rear of the house. Extends to the back of the house. So if you look at A0, it shows the hatched area, and the proposed indicates the new footprint of the addition. And so from left to right, you'd be looking at the kitchen on the left, the living room in the middle, and a screen porch to the right. The screen porch is extending out also to the side yard by about 3 feet more than where it sits now. And that's what's triggering the variance, because it puts the building width at 46 feet, which matches the front building width, which is currently 71% of the lot width. So it's an existing non-conforming. We are matching that existing length. If you turn the page to A1 is the demolition plan, the proposed demolition plan. You can see again from left to right, there's the kitchen on the left, living room in the middle, and the porch to the right. We're proposing to remove the porch and the deck, which are right now very narrow. The porch, for example, is about 8.5 feet wide, so very long and narrow and somewhat unusable. Next page would be A2, which shows the proposed plan. The expanded to the back, the new living room, which now will connect to the kitchen. The porch, bringing it out another 3 feet, will align with the office in the front. And then there's the deck is now longer than it is deep. A3, the elevation, shows again the shed roof to the left over the kitchen, a shed roof over the living room. Both are relatively flat to minimize the bulk. And then on the right is the proposed new screen porch with the gable end roof. The last page, A4, shows a section profile through the living room so you can see the slope of the new shed roofs over the living room and the kitchen. So from my understanding of building width and what's triggering this variance is the line, if you were to draw through the kitchen and the porch, would run through the deck, but because the deck is considered permanent structure, it's part of the addition that counts towards the 65%. So we're asking for the kitchen, deck, porch addition to match the width of the front of the house, which is the non-conforming 71%. Pretty much it.
Do you have any proposed renderings of how it'll look? Okay. Let's see now. Okay. A1, okay.
A3 is the elevation. It shows the new windows that will match the windows of the existing kitchen. The middle section shows the new living room, mudroom entry, and you can see the deck is 2 risers high. So currently the deck does not connect the porch to the kitchen. You have to step down and then back up onto the deck and then back up onto the porch. So now the deck connects the porch with the kitchen. But it's 14 inches off the ground.
It looks like a significant, well, somewhat of a significant extension. Any particular reason?
For the screen porch.
Just for the extension.
For the extension in general. Right now, each room in the house is pretty separated from the others. The extension in the back will allow us to tie the kitchen and the living room together. A little bit more flow through the house. And then the extension of the screen porch is just to make the space more usable. Currently, the screen porch sits on 2 levels. The sort of upper level, there's a step up of a typical riser step. That'll be closed off, internalized for storage, and then widening out the lower level so that we can just get more use out of it, add a couple chairs, entertain more.
Thank you.
Other questions from members of the board?
Excuse me. So the deck comes out an extra 7 feet from the line of the kitchen, correct? If I'm looking at this.
Yes, approximately.
So if the deck didn't protrude so much, would that be enough to cover and be within, to build the construction without the variance?
No, if we did not build a deck, we would not need a variance. If we just had
I mean, if it wasn't so deep, like if you put the deck in line, because right now it's coming out, extending past the edge of the...
Right. No, I think the line would be drawn through the porch and the deck and the kitchen. So the only way to not need a variance would be to not build a deck between the porch and the kitchen. If you interrupt the deck, we don't need a variance. That's how it is now, and it's not very functional.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yeah. I guess I just want to clarify the variance we're looking at. What is the 65% width of that lot width? What would that number be?
It would be about 43 feet.
So it would be smaller than the existing house as it is now?
It would basically be what the house is now, which is, right now it's 43 feet wide. So if you look at A1, there was an addition put on before. There was a kitchen addition and a porch addition, and it was essentially built at exactly 43 feet, which is 65%. And what you end up with is that 8.5-foot wide porch, and which is over 20 feet long. And so what we're saying is bump that out 3 feet to align with the office so it becomes a usable outdoor family room.
And so your intention in this design is to align that sort of office wall with the porch wall on the
Yes.
that way south.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so that's where it's triggering the variance here, that width of that.
Correct.
Did you explore looking at whether this would work keeping within that depth? If maybe the porch was more into the deck area, or some other? Did you explore any of those options?
Yes, but then it overlaps. The porch overlaps the living room in a kind of an awkward way. Just aesthetically, the elevation looks strange, and the deck is cramped.
And so this you propose is probably the best of the options that.
The best I could come up with was just to.
Okay.
I thought that the elevation on A3 was the best design of the roof line and the location of the windows. Right now, the windows are aligned with the windows in the front of the house in the living room, so I thought that keeping them in the center of the room is a good idea.
And this last question, sort of, I don't believe this is something that's not dealing with us, but you might want to just check where that chimney for the, was that a fireplace vents out? Looks
Cast iron stove, yes.
Yeah, it looks kind of, check the property line distance there. That's not a zoning issue, but for you to think about for permitting.
Right, sure.
Thank you.
Other questions from members of the board? I guess I'm confused. I'm confused at multiple levels. Not really, but we'll do it that way. Okay, so the existing house, what is its width at the front? And
At the front is 46 feet 1 inch.
but what about, there's the little side protrusion on the right-hand side that isn't counted as part of that. Why not?
Because I'm not sure exactly. So, well, I mean, at that point, the house is obviously wider, but at the front wall, the applicant has shown at the front wall that it's 46.1. I'm not sure what the distance is at the wider part.
But isn't the width, I mean, you can't get away from the width limitation by having things set back a little off of, I would assume you would draw the line at the widest point. Okay, so and then my understanding would be, even if they eliminated the deck, they still need the variance because the porch addition on the side is making that portion of the house wider at, if you draw a line through. But that is, it's only the 46 feet 1 inch width is what would result from the addition, the same as a house other than that bump out, which makes it slightly, so they're not even, the the addition is not quite as wide as
It's the
the
widest
existing
point.
house at the widest point.
Correct.
It's- okay. Any other questions from members of the board? Mr. McCulloch?
Just a question about the storage space. Is that for season off of the office?
Yes, so currently that storage area is, there's almost like a vestibule in the porch, and we're taking that higher level, that vestibule outdoor space, and converting it to conditioned space that'll be used off the office. So that's going to stay. The roof stays. It's just making that conditioned space, and then the porch is bumping out a little bit further.
And so I'm assuming that it will not represent an extension of the basement area as well?
No.
Okay.
No.
Other questions from members of the board?
So, right next to the porch extension, is there anything in terms of landscaping right there in between your property and the adjacent property?
There's a hedgerow of forsythia.
Roughly, what's the height? Oh,
The forsythia? It is a little bit taller than I am, about six or so feet high. We actually had to cut it back last year after the heavy snowstorm in March, but it's growing pretty rapidly back up.
and that's on both sides?
It is on our property line. It runs all the way down past any structure of either house.
I meant on both ends, on your, for your neighbors to the right and the left.
The neighbors to the other side, the driveway side of the house, we have a row of arborvitae, and that is 13 or so feet high.
Thank you.
Other questions from members of the board? Are there any members of the audience who have questions, testimony, statements, comments, anything you want to say about the application? Is there anything either of you want to say before we discuss and vote on the application? Last chance to say anything you want to.
Well, thank you.
We'll start discussion with Ms. Harris.
I think the addition is just matching an existing condition, so I don't really have any real, any objections to this application.
Mr. Simon?
In favor.
Mr. Affronti?
Also in favor?
Mr. Church?
I'm in favor.
Mr. Moore?
I'm in favor.
Mr. Reynolds?
I'm in favor.
Mr. Allen?
I'm in favor.
Mr. McCulloch? I'm also in favor. I mean, basically, but for the little jut-in for the air conditioning, they're continuing the wall of the existing house on both sides. They're not making it wider than the house already is, so they're not creating a new encroachment. It's to the rear, so visually from the street, no one will ever notice, and these properties are very deep, so the property owners to the rear are not likely to notice anything, and in reality, they'll be looking at the same width house, slightly closer, but as is already there. Someone want to make a so this will not result in a substantial detriment to the public good or a substantial impairment to the zoning plan. Someone want to make a motion?
I motion to approve the application.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
The next application is that of Jordan Hacker and Laura Czar for property at 477 Grove Street. This is an application for a variance to construct an addition to an existing dwelling. The property is in the R1 one-family zone. Property is designated on the tax maps as Block 153, Block 4601. A variance is requested from Montclair Code Section 347-45B2 to permit a minimum front yard setback for corner lots of less than the required average of the front yard setbacks of the two nearest principal structures on the respective street frontages. The applicant also requests any other variances that are required? Are taxes paid and is the notice in order?
Yes.
Would you, all three, raise your right hands? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
Yes.
State your names and addresses, please.
Laura Azar, 477 Grove Street, Montclair.
Jordan Hacker, 477 Grove Street, Montclair.
Jonathan Pearlstein, Oasis Architecture, 312 North Fullerton Avenue, Montclair.
Sit down and tell us about the addition.
Good evening. We're dealing with a corner lot in an R1 zone with a house that is non-conforming in a number of ways. It's an older home from the 1920s, and it has the kind of problems that corner lots often have when you're trying to line up with the average front yard setbacks. Often runs into trouble. Additionally, the existing house is non-conforming. It is longer than 65% of the street front on Grove Street. Furthermore, it has a non-conforming dormer in the attic that's greater than 50% of the length of the wall below it. Additionally, it's only 3.7 feet from the property line to the north. So there's a series of problems that this house has. But our clients wish to renovate the house and expand it suitable for a young, growing family. Like many houses of this era, there's a basic shape, kind of a gable shape in this house, with a one-story sunroom off to the side. In this case, it's to the south. Part of what we are proposing to do is to add a second story to that one-story sunroom, which is something we've done before on corner lots. In this particular case, it nicely balances the facade. Additionally, we are adding I would say it's a 1.5-story over basement addition to the east. And additionally, we are tearing down the existing garage, it's a freestanding garage in the rear yard, and putting the parking in the basement of the house, thereby increasing the amount of light and air to the neighbors. If we were in fact to honor the average side yard along Dryden, we would wind up with an addition that could be no more than about 15 feet wide. It'd be long and skinny, look like a trailer. It would be very inappropriate, hard to lay out on the inside. So what we did was we felt we had to choose one corner or the other of the house. We chose the south corner and decided that everything we do in terms of additions is within the 65%. So in other words, the addition is not as non-conforming as the house. The other feature of this piece of land is that it's a slope, slopes down to the east. It sits up on a berm on Dryden, and we took that into account in developing the design in a variety of ways, which I will explain to you. The overall intent of the addition to the east was to take the house and not just take a 60-foot width and just run it down the street, but very carefully break down the mass into a series of areas that have roofs over them instead of walls, dormers, stepping down easily towards the east, thereby making the house settle into the land nicely, and terminating with a roof porch off the new kitchen family room. By the time you're at that point on the site, you're a full story almost above the ground. So often what you see are people with this situation putting a deck out behind the kitchen up off the ground. We felt it was more appropriate, more tasteful, more in keeping with the feel of the house to get a roof porch. Underneath this porch is an addition to the basement that contains a rec room, bathroom, and a wet bar, and mudroom. Because this is on a slope, often what you would have on a house on a shallow slope may have the mudroom next to the kitchen on the same level, maybe a couple of steps down. Because of the contours of this piece of land, it made more sense to put the mudroom at the basement level, attach it to the garage, which is adjacent to the existing basement, and thereby create the family entry to the house that way along Dryden Road. I think Part of that also has to do with choosing Dryden Road as the main family entry, because Grove Street is rather busy. Also, orienting the new spaces in the house to the sun, to the south and the east, the kitchen, the family room, the master suite, the master bath. Additionally, we know that we are not allowed to park between the sidewalk and the garage. We made a point of pulling the garage as far to the north as possible, thereby giving the design a nice, easy driveway from Dryden down to the garage level. The existing house's basement has very low ceiling height, 6 feet and change, I believe, not really worth developing, so we're leaving it unfinished, just for general storage, accessible to the garage. In the addition, under the porch is a room which I spoke about before, which offers direct access to a patio in the rear yard. It can be used a variety of different ways, but in no way is it going to be used as a rental unit. It's either going to be used as an in-law suite for the parents if they want to age in place, or a rec room for the kids, or for whatever else they want to use. But it is not the intent to sneak in a second unit here by any means whatsoever. Additionally, a house like this requires 3 parking spaces. We have accommodated all 3 cars, 2 in the garage and 1 in the existing driveway. So there's a conformance there. If you see the elevations, you can see that what I'm explaining to you bears itself out in 3D. These are accurate 3D renderings. They are not artistic depictions. We build in a 3D model, and it's the same model that we use for the floor plan. So what you see is what you're going to get. There's another variance that was picked up by the planning department with regard to a retaining wall that is greater than 4.5 feet high, which is the left retaining wall, the west retaining wall at the driveway. The reason for this is because it's matching the contour of the berm that's there right now. If we were to notch it down and stop it at 4.5 feet over the driveway, it would be unsightly. It's much nicer to pick it up to the grade level, meet the house at the grade level. It makes the house itself look slightly more tied into the land. So we think it's a reasonable design decision to make under the circumstances. It's not like we're putting the house up on an 8-foot retaining wall. It's the retaining wall that's generated by the carving of the driveway into the grade. The interior of the house is pretty straightforward. It's a master suite, family room, kitchen, formal living, dining, kids' bedrooms, what you expect to see in a house like this in Montclair. The attic will be used for home study, office, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's the essence of the design right there. We're also adding a small vestibule in the front that's slightly non-conforming, another method to break down the mass of the house, to give it more of a human scale as you approach it from Grove Street. The addition is nowhere near the 35-foot maximum height. It's below that. The basement under the addition is a full basement. It's not a story. It's mostly underground because it's tied into the slope. The other thing worth noting is this addition pulls back 6 feet from the north property line, which is what is required by zoning. We chose not to use the north wall of the house as the spring point. First of all, it's a bit of a fire hazard. You have to fire rate walls that are so close to the property line. It gives the neighbor a little bit more light and air. We even set our HVAC units in a recessed niche so that they as well are beyond the 6-foot setback. We are under on lot coverage, so we are looking to do everything we can to honor height and the 65-foot width, parking requirements, breaking down the massing to make it more appealing to the neighborhood, working with the contours of the land, and winding up with a house that hopefully meets the favor of the zoning board.
Yeah, the front part of the house is 2.5 stories, the rear is 3.
Existing and proposed, yes.
The existing is?
Yes, that's
3?
correct, because the existing attic dormer is greater than 50% of the length of the below.
Okay. What's the total height?
Of the house?
Yeah.
I'll tell you in a second. The house itself is 30 feet from the grade at the house to the peak.
Okay. Thank you.
Couple of questions. What is the purpose of the wet bar again?
Well, you know, when you have a house on the slope, you know, and you have a rec room down on grade, and the kids are playing and whatnot, you know, it's just convenient, really. I mean, a lot of people have basements that have a little extra sink, you know, down there.
So the proposed bedroom might also be a rec room, is that what you're
It
saying?
could be, it depends on where they are in life.
Okay.
They have elderly parents that may want to use that room, maybe not. Maybe just it'll be a place for the kids to play. Maybe they want to have a party out there in the yard, and they just want to grab a soda or something. And no cooking facilities in there.
Right.
And in
Okay.
fact, if you see the bathroom, you'll see we took into account that there's a possibility of elderly people aging in place. You'll see the bathroom has grab bars, turning radius, big door.
So, thank you. So the driveway, the garage itself is essentially under the house. So, based on the drawings, it appears as though there is a slope to get down there.
Yeah.
So how are you intending to deal with water?
The construction documents will show a continuous trench drain
Okay.
in front of the garage door that will be tied
In front of the door?
You're not concerned about backing out of that driveway to get out with the wall, the sight lines, car maybe parked on that side?
Not really, I don't think so, because we have 25 or so foot driveway in there between the garage and the sidewalk.
But you're going to be going up a,
Pretty
but
cautious
you are going to be going up a slope, right? It's not like you're backing straight up.
Goes up, yeah. It's like a 2 or 3% slope, it's very shallow.
It is shallow there?
Yeah, in fact, because the calculations anticipating the question, the door to the garage is 2 feet below the sidewalk.
This is your elevation drawing that you have here? This is what you're looking at?
I'm showing you the average grade drawing.
Yeah, that's not what you're talking about? Oh, these are existing.
This is between the garage door and the sidewalk.
Okay.
As it is, the existing conditions call for backing out.
Oh.
We're not making it any worse, really. Existing garage is a back out type of situation.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions from members of the board? Can you bring any other pictures for us? Or do we have?
You don't have these.
Okay.
These are if you wanted to see what it would look like if we didn't have the 8-foot retaining wall, if we were to keep it without a variance. It shows you the difference between doing it as of right, which we think is not as successful, and doing it requiring a variance. That's one of the sets of drawings we have here. And the other one is a proposal to reduce the length of the existing attic dormer to make it a little bit less non-conforming. You're welcome to look at these if you want.
It's up to you what you want to present to us.
Okay, well, I'll hand them out then.
I don't, at this point, I'm not sure there's any, no one's asked questions about the existing third floor dormer. I don't know if there's any need to show us.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to.
Right.
Look at that.
You want to do a handing out? This is
Yeah.
just another version of it.
This is Hanson.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll hand them out. I'll hand them out to you. Sure. This one is enough for everybody. Again, this is not the application. This is in the event that you would like us to do something a little bit more
Mr. Pearlstein, so what are you handing up to the board?
These are, this is two aerial perspective renderings of the house from the southeast. One is called SK3, which reflects what you already have in your possession. And the one behind it is called SK4, which shows a way to shrink the attic dormer, if it in fact is something somebody cared about.
All right, you have multiple sets of this?
Yes, I have.
We're going to mark one as Exhibit A1 collectively, and you're
Yeah.
going to give that to Graham, and then how many copies do you have?
12 more.
Can you tell me what the existing square, like the square footage of the building is and what the addition will be?
I'll need my pencil for that. Take a second. Wherever it is. Yeah, I'm just going to tally it all up for you. Here we are. The existing first floor is 871 square feet. The existing second floor is 712 square feet. The existing attic is, I would say, approximately 300 and something square feet. I can get that more specific if you want. So the existing house is 1,883 square feet, not counting the basement. And the addition is 871 on the first floor, 619 on the second, and the attic is about the same, but we also have the room in the basement, right? And that's 724 square feet. So and we also are adding that small side addition right on the second floor. 26. I'm not counting the porch, not counting the garage, not counting the basement. It's finished. So we're adding 2730 if I did this correctly. And if you would add that to 1883, it's 4613. So we're, more than doubling the size of the house.
You're removing 7 trees in total off the property?
Yeah, I'll talk about trees if you like. I went to the property and did a survey of the trees. Currently, there's a wide variety of trees on this parcel. There are 3 specimen trees in the front, which are not going to be removed. One is pit oak, one's a Norway maple, and one's a pear. The Norway maple is quite big, although Norway maples are considered invasive species trees in New Jersey. However, we're going to keep that one. We're not taking that down. I'll talk about the ones we're keeping, by the way, first. There is a beautiful, I believe it's a weeping cherry or a weeping birch along Dryden. We're keeping that. Along the east side, there's a dogwood, there's a couple of Norway maples, and there's a locust. Those are all being kept. And there's a number in the back there behind the garage that we're keeping. Along the north property line, there are a series of Norway maples that we want to take down. They're invasive and they're right on the property line. And they would probably get killed anyway, no matter what kind of condition you put on.
Those are the 6 along the chain link fence?
Sorry?
Are those the 6 along the chain link fence that you're referring to?
Well, along the chain link fence, there are 4 Norway maples. There's also an ash tree. ash trees are in trouble now as well because of the weed borer. That particular ash tree is a hazard. It actually is right up against the neighbor's garage, and actually all the roots are under the garage. There's a problem with that tree. Additionally, there's a very large white pine right on the property line, right next to the existing house, which really shouldn't be saved. It's a hazard as well. So those are the 6 trees coming down. The ones along the north property line where the lot is narrow. As you know, it's an L-shaped lot. The lot gets rather deep towards the back. And it's worth adding that really, we chose the narrower, I suppose that's by zoning, which determined the 65%. So those are coming down. There's a white pine in the front that will be coming down, and there are 2 white pines right where the sunroom is along Dryden that your drawings indicate as to be removed. However, in further conversations with clients, they would like to keep them if at all possible. Those 2 white pines are very tall. They have their roots under the existing addition. We are not increasing the footprint of that addition. We are adding a second story to the addition. However, those trees are way higher than the addition will be. So they theoretically could be kept. We don't know if they're healthy or not, or if they're in danger. I think my clients are willing to bring an arborist in and see if they can save those trees. If we have to reinforce the foundations under the 1-story existing porch, we do it with a series of spot footings so as not to tamper with the roots. So these are clients who like trees and want to keep as many as possible, but also need a bigger house. So we're trying to find a balance.
So are there any plans to replace the trees, or at least on the, I guess it's the north side? I'm looking where you have the proposed HVAC unit.
There are no plans to replace those with trees, although I believe my clients would be amenable to planting
Or
shrubs
any
there.
kind of landscape? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And some landscape.
Well, there is a landscape all over the place here. We don't have a planting. They like nature type living arrangements. I can imagine sitting on the porch looking out and seeing trees and bushes.
Well, where I was going is just looking from your neighbor's yard. Are they just going to be looking at a wall? Or the equipment, that's what I was referring to. Okay, thank you.
We talked about this just before. We'd be willing to plant along that. But I don't think it would be wise to put trees there. It's a very narrow space. But we'd be willing to plant something there, sure.
This side elevation that you have here, as you mentioned, you're almost doubling the size of the existing home. It's quite imposing, and doesn't seem to fit the character of the surrounding neighborhood. Did you look at maybe trying to find a way to make the existing basement more usable instead of adding this addition in the back?
The existing basement has 6 and change ceilings. It's not very usable. It's very important to my clients to have the garage in the house. It would make the basement kind of inaccessible. I personally do not think this is an imposing addition. I think it's a carefully designed addition. It steps back, it steps down, steps in and out. There are other houses in this neighborhood that are large. There's one right across the street. There's one, once you go one more block up, there are very large houses on Park Street. I think it's a responsible design. Like I said before, we didn't just put a big box on the back. If you look at the renderings, you can see how much care was put into the design. I don't know if you have a copy of the renderings. I think we did everything we could to be responsible about this, increasing the number of windows more than you need in the addition, so it breaks down the mass that way as well. Using roofs instead of walls where possible to break down the boxiness of it. Transitioning from a boxy house to a window type addition to a porch just breaks it down even better. And sort of as you move along to the south, it gets more airy, it gets more light, it gets more friendly. So I do believe we did our due diligence to make this look as good as it can.
How about the roof over the porch off of the kitchen? Is that totally necessary? I think that would help cut down on this perceived scale of this addition.
The porch roof?
Yeah.
If you look at the 3D, you'll see the porch roof is not as wide as the addition. It's pushed back. Okay, it's a smaller roof, and really requiring, a lot of outdoor space without roof. I think they'd like a roof over their porch. I think it's a more comfortable way of living. I think it's a more traditional way of living. I think there are many houses in Montclair that people love because they have porches and not decks. So we think that's a reasonable amenity for this particular house. And it's only one story over the basement. It's not all the way up.
Thank you.
Just a question along the same line. I noticed that from your rendering that there's a grill inside that porch off of the kitchen, right? A grill?
Can I go up there and see what you're...
Yes. I mean, that's what it appears from this photo. What is that?
Oh, barbecue grill. Yeah.
Yes, okay, all right. So,
If you don't like it, we'll take it out.
well,
I wouldn't grill up there.
I mean, that's the question. I mean, have you checked to see whether or not that would meet, fire code to have a grill in a location like that with the roof?
We absolutely don't need a grill there. We can put it outside on the bottom. I think it was just for the rendering sake of
it's just
putting
aesthetic,
furniture up in there. So you
architectural
could, right,
aesthetic.
it was so that we could kind of get a sense of what it looks like with furniture in the area, but no.
I understand it would
have
not
to
be
go there.
convenient to have to walk down
You don't want to burn
25
down
steps
your,
to get a hot dog, but...
your new addition.
Okay.
Showing what? Well, that's a Google map. That's what we often use.
So just so, I'm sorry. Just so I understand, the second picture here gets rid of the height variance, the three-story thing?
It doesn't, the house already is a three-story, so we're just trying to minimize where possible, the area of three-story. We're taking an area of three-story there that's hard to see and trying to cut it back.
So you still would need a variance?
Yes.
Okay.
I have one more set of drawings I want to send out to you to explain what I was saying before about the retaining wall. So, from this one.
Okay, Mr. Pearlstein, what does this exhibit consist of?
One is a drawing called SK1, retaining wall is submitted, and the other one's called SK2, retaining wall lowered to 4'6". It's a perspective view from the south, showing the two ways, showing the retaining wall as designed and showing an as-of-right retaining wall.
Okay, we're going to collectively mark that as A2, and I'll pass the rest down.
We're submitting this because we want to make the case that the retaining wall is reasonable under the circumstances. As I said before, blends the house better into the berm. The retaining walls on the other side of the driveway are all conforming because they're on the downhill side. What you're going to see there is you're going to see that the retaining wall is notched down to the 4'6" height. You're going to see a wall beyond, and you're going to wonder what that is. That's the foundation of the existing house. So it's not a retaining wall at that point, it's a basement wall.
Are the garages going to be black, or are the garage doors open on that rendering here?
Oh, we haven't colored black, but we haven't really picked the color scheme yet.
Okay, so it might be open, we'll say.
They pick white. I don't know what they have in mind. But they'd be, quality doors for a house like this.
questions from members of the board? Yeah, I'm working on understanding your drawings, and the existing house has, on the south side, has the one-story portion of that is, and the chimney is going up on the north side of that, going up the two-story, or technically three-story portion of the house. Is that correct?
There's no chimney there now. That's the sunroom right now.
But there's a chimney going up the main portion of the house.
In the proposed design, that's a new chimney.
I'm working on the existing chimney.
Oh, on the existing, I'm sorry, yes, okay. We are removing the existing chimney and putting a new chimney in a new place.
The 2/3-story portion of the house, it's 2 in the front, 3 in the rear, so technically 3, but that's not my point of this. How far is that setback from Dryden?
How far is the setback?
From Dryden.
From Dryden, yes. To that, we're adding the second floor?
To the existing main portion of the house, not the sunroom,
Oh, not counting the sunroom?
Yes.
Feet.
And then, so the second floor and attic that's going where the sunroom is now, that is keeping the same setback as the sunroom?
Right, the 10-foot-5 is what we have now at the sunroom. It's taking it all the way up.
And then the chimney is on the Dryden Road side, the new chimney is on the Dryden Road
Right.
side of that. Okay, part of this, trying to match your drawings to the pretty pictures you're showing us what it'll look like. And it may just be the perspective on those, but the garage and the addition above that, that's keeping the roughly 20 feet that the main house is now, a little further back than that. Is that correct?
The garage is, yes, the garage is a little bit further back than the south wall of the main house. In other words, the wall that separates the main house from the addition. It's about in line with that. However, part of it is the new stair, which does line up with the edge of the existing sunroom. It kind of goes in and out along Dryden. And each floor is a little different, depending on what's going on inside.
And then the portion of the addition east of the garage addition is keeping the 10 feet 5 inches that the sunroom has now.
That is lining up with the sunroom, and then it jumps back for the porch. So we're keeping the 10.5 all the way down over there, at the worst case. And in some instances, parts of the first floor, certainly much of the second floor is further back than that. So it's not 10.5 all the way up. Only place is 10.5 all the way up is at the existing sunroom. The rest of it pushes back in different degrees from the street.
And part of this is because, the drawings you handed out tonight show none of the trees, which makes it a little hard to relate to. But I guess in terms of the retaining wall, I'm not understanding why doing a conforming one is presenting a problem.
Because parts of it are higher than 4'6", which is what the zoning allows.
No, if you did it at 4'6", why?
I think it just is not as nice. It's just, it's kind of choppy. It doesn't pick up the feel of the existing grade over there. it can be done.
But it's, one of the things, as my colleagues point out, is a car backing out is going to have limited visibility looking towards Grove Street until they're towards the end of the driveway. Because I'll be staring at this big wall. And I'm not really understanding the justification for it in terms of appearance. I'm not seeing a problem with the appearance of the conforming retaining.
I think the key is that it starts low and goes up towards the house. So by the time you're approaching the street, when you're backing out, I think it's already as low as can be. In the current driveway backing out, there's a lot of trees close to the street to the right side, so that, there's similar challenges backing out of a driveway in the existing state. And I think because the wall really slopes down to a pretty low point where it meets the sidewalk, I don't envision it being an issue. I think that, from my perspective, I think just having it higher towards the house is a little bit nicer looking, and I think the intent of the drawing was just to show a comparison. I don't think sitting in a car you can necessarily see Grove Street from, having the lower wall there.
Did you look at all at, instead of putting the garage where you're putting it, having it come in to the rear of the house?
Yes. By doing so, you're sort of cutting off the lower level access to the yard. It's like you just can have, it's like a sort of a lost opportunity to have indoor outdoor living right there at that level. I would think, good design would have, best exposures set aside for living space and not for storage space, which is really what a garage is. So it just made sense in the middle. It made sense in terms of how it relates to the mudroom and the first floor above it. So, yeah, I would imagine you'd want to have, your windowed living areas enjoying the rear of the yard and the sun and, the eastern exposure, the southern exposure. It's just kind of a nicer thing.
No, it's switching an eastern exposure for a southern exposure is the trade-off.
You are, but then you're not, you're cutting off your yard access from the lower level.
But your yard is still going to have a driveway in the middle of it.
True. But a lot of it won't. That would just be like for guest parking anyway. They're not a family with 3 cars.
Other questions from members of the board? Are there any members of the public who have any questions, testimony, statements, comments on the application? Okay, anything further you want to add before we discuss and vote on the application?
Yeah, I didn't put trees in tonight's exhibits because I was trying to show the massing issues, really. I was trying to show you, make believe the trees were there or were not there. It was strictly a technical exercise with regard to the dormer and to the retaining wall.
We'll start discussion with Mr. Simon.
I'm generally in favor of the application, with the exception of the retaining wall. I think the sight lines, even in the picture, you can just imagine maybe a child or a pedestrian not seeing a car pulling out or in action of pulling out. So other than the retaining wall, I'm generally in favor.
Mr. Affronti?
Somewhat in favor. I'm still trying to digest a lot of this, but I'm a little concerned that it's a bit much and that I haven't seen enough evidence that it won't negatively affect the surrounding properties. I know that you mentioned, there's a larger house across the street, but then looking at all of the other houses on the other side of Dryden Road, I mean, they'll seem to be in line with that, 2.5, sorry, they're just, I guess, more in line with the current size of the house, so. Part of it's just whether, the size is necessary to me at this point.
Mr. Church.
I too, I am concerned about the size. I think it's, with the retaining wall, that adds bulk to my eye that you have going in the garage. The overall structure, to me, although there are bigger houses around, I believe this is just very large. I'm concerned about that from the standpoint that it may be imposing in that area to the houses immediately surrounding. And I think it just takes up too much of the lot. I believe that before I render a yes or no on this, I want to hear from other members of the board, but my initial reaction is that it's a big, bulky addition with height and air and space being taken up. And I know it's going to be modified by foliage and things like that, which most houses do, to modify the expanse, the bigness of a house. But this one's just really big. And it kind of goes against what I fear these neighborhoods need. They don't need bigger, they just need better. So I'm just going to reserve my opinion until I get
Mr. Moore.
Well, let me first compliment you on the design. It's certainly contemporary, and it would certainly upgrade the current house that's existing. I do agree with my colleague. It is a fairly large size of an expansion on the lot. So I'm also going to defer to my colleagues in hearing what they have to say. But for the most part, I am in favor because I do believe that it adds value to the street that it's on, and it complements the curve somewhat. I see that it's moving along with the topography. So I see that you took some time in designing this. I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to hear what my colleagues have to say.
Mr. Reynolds.
So first, generally, I believe I'm in favor with the height and setback variances and the width. The retaining wall is difficult to wrap around. We've seen other solutions in front of this board that have dealt with that in the RO Mountain Zone in some very interesting ways. I think one of the things that's not really considered is how to regrade your existing site to try to reduce that. I think that one of the other things that I think will help break up, you started talking about breaking up the mass and sort of looking from the Dryden side, that proposed bedroom / rec room area, which has that huge folding wall on this side. Facing the street, though, we still have a big blank wall, which could be broken up or even find some way to undulate or add something so it just doesn't seem like just a big blank wall there. So generally I'm in favor. I think there's some solutions that weren't fully thought through, though, on the retaining wall side, and you are that could be looked at again.
Mr. Allen?
Well, it's a lot of variances. I guess the first three are okay. The fourth one is one I have a problem with. It's just, I don't know why it has to be this large, this long, I should say. I guess a better way to say it. What did you say about that room, the last room below the roof? Said that's going to be sort of an empty room, and maybe it would be somewhere to put the in-laws or something?
For the walkout basement on the bottom?
Yeah.
It's primarily for an in-law suite. Also can become a playroom, a rec room, or gym type area.
Yeah, well, I don't know. To me, I don't know if I can, I'm having a problem with that last variance. That's my feeling.
Mr. McCullough?
I think the design is stunning, and I would say it would look fantastic on Cape Cod. I am concerned about the size of it. However, I've noted that neighbors haven't come to raise that as a question. I'm assuming that the neighbors are aware of what is being proposed, and none of them have chosen to express to this zoning board concern about the size of this proposed project. With that said, I would prefer that there be no cooking, barbecuing on that second or that first floor porch, because I do think that it's a fire hazard. I also believe that the lower retaining wall is more appropriate. And while I certainly understand that driving out and given the new technology of a lot of cars, of course, you have sensors that tell you if there's movement, but they don't always pick up pedestrians. And I think that's more of the concern. So I think the lower retaining wall is really more appropriate than something that is more substantial. So generally, I think I'm in favor of this.
Mr. Caulfield?
I'm not in favor of this. I think it's, I just feel like it's too big. I think there's a reasonable way of doing things. I don't think that this represents this area. So I'm not in favor of it.
Ms. Harris?
Can I ask a question? Graham, can you clarify the last variance being sought? Is that the width of the building on the Grove Street side or on the
345,
Yeah.
347-45C 4A.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's the applicant, that's with respect to the Grove Street frontage. Sorry. Yeah, I should have been clear in my summary, sorry.
I agree that I don't think the retaining wall conforming to the zoning ordinance should be an issue. I think it actually looks better lower. So I wouldn't be in favor of approving that variance. In terms of the other three variances, I don't think you're making the dormer condition worse by adding on to it. It's already non-conforming. And also the setback on Dryden Road is also, you're not making the existing condition worse. I mean, I do feel that this addition is overly large and that there are things that you could do to use the existing space that wouldn't require this much of an addition, but I don't think any of those issues are before the board today. I'm generally not in favor of this addition, but in terms of the variances that you're requesting, I don't see why we would, other than the retaining wall, I don't see why we wouldn't approve them.
So I'm not in favor of the retaining wall variance. I'm bouncing around these. I don't have a problem with the building width variance. They're not making the building wider as it relates to Grove Street. We've allowed other variances where they've added a second story above an existing first story, and that's, as to that variance in the front of the house, that's what's happening. And Graham, I just, in terms of, and the existing house is 3 stories based on the dormer to the rear, is that correct?
Yeah, the existing dormer exceeds 50% of the width of the facade.
And they're not basically altering that, is that correct? I mean, that's my understanding as to, this is more of a technical variance?
Well, they're widening the second floor, and they're widening the dormer in relation to the second floor, so.
Right. This is not like they're doubling the dormer.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. It's an existing third story that they're maintaining.
And they're making it somewhat larger,
Yep.
but, okay. So the variance that I'm struggling with is the front yard setback along Dryden Road. Currently, a 1-story sunroom that has 2 very large trees in front of it is what is the 10.5 feet. I mean, it's not insignificant portion of the main house is within the required 29 feet, but, that is, set back an additional 10 feet or so from the street, and they're putting, I understand they were trying to respect the side yard along the northern property line, but this is putting a very large amount of house within the front yard setback. That is, this is not a simple, technically they're following the line of the existing house. This is dramatically different than what currently exists, what was their neighbors on the opposite side of Dryden Road are going to be looking out, and it's going to be very different from the setback of the 2 houses, and for that matter, the remaining houses going down Dryden Road, from what's there, and much larger than, I mean, even if those houses which front on Dryden Road are not going to be anywhere near the width that this house is going to be. So I'm just not, seeing how I can do it. Granting a front yard variance to some extent, yes, I could do that. Given both the narrowness of the lot as it relates to the side yard and having 2 front yards, but to do it to this extent, it seems to be defeating the whole purpose of the ordinance to have the front yard setback and taking advantage of what is, for the 10.5 portion of the house, you're now going to have dramatically more house up to the 10.5 feet, and plus much of the remainder of the addition still encroaching because of the 29 feet requirement. But do we want to have further discussion? Let's start that, because we're of diverse views on diverse variances, and if not, I think I would say let's start with the retaining wall, because there seemed to be some consensus on that, and go for that. So does someone want to make a motion on whether we should approve or deny the requested retaining wall variance?
I would make a motion to deny the existing retaining wall.
The requested retaining wall variance.
Yeah, requested retaining wall.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Okay, you want to call the roll? Just.
So on the retaining wall, Mr. Affronti.
Yes vote is to deny.
Yes. Mr. Allen.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. McCullough.
Yes.
Mr. Church.
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds.
Yes.
And Mr. Harrison.
Yes. Now, someone needs to make a I mean, I guess, why don't we do the third-story variance, because there wasn't much discussion of that, but
Motion to approve the third-story variance?
is there a second?
Second.
This is to approve the variance for the third-floor addition.
Second.
Mr. Affronti?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. McCullough?
Yes.
Mr. Church?
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yeah.
And Mr. Harrison?
Yes. Okay. There, other than my there also is not much discussion on the 65, the building width variance for Grove Street, but does someone want to make a motion as to that? This is basically approving the second floor addition over the sunroom is most of that. I think some of I suspect, though, the portion of the addition immediately east of the garage probably does that, though that's slightly less wide than the
That's wide.
houses.
Yeah, it's really just the additions to consistent with the main portion of the dwelling, exceed the 65%.
Someone needs to make a motion. We can't sit here all night. It's very pleasant here, but other applicants want to be heard.
Move approval of the Dryden, was that the Dryden Road variance?
No.
Fourth one?
The
Building width variance.
Building width.
Which is building width related to Grove Street.
Building width is related to Grove Street.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Affronti?
No.
Mr. Allen?
No.
Mr. Moore?
No.
Mr. McCullough?
Yes.
Mr. Church?
No.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Okay, that fails.
Is that for the 65%?
Yes. Okay. Then, someone want to make a motion on the front yard variance for Dryden Road? Which-
I'll move to.
Okay, now-
Can we take a revote?
Okay, is there a second to approve that?
Second, yeah.
Okay, now, the net effect of the prior vote would mean they do not get to build the second-story addition on the main portion of the house, just so you're aware of where we would be left off, but you want to...
I changed
We have a motion, we're going to do some order of the split here. So the motion's been made to approve the Dryden Road front yard setback.
Can we have a second?
Second.
Second, okay. All right. Mr. Affronti?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. McCullough?
Yes.
Mr. Church?
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yes.
And Mr. Harrison?
No.
Okay. Front yard is approved.
I think I might have missed something. So is everything approved except for the addition on top of the sunroom?
Everything is approved except the retaining wall and deviating from the
Maximum permitted
maximum
building width of
building width,
65%.
which effectively, as proposed, you cannot build the addition on the sunroom.
So we could do the other addition.
Anything that does not exceed the 65%.
So in other words, we could keep the dormer. The main bulky addition is okay, except for the retaining wall, which we'll submit as an as-of-right retaining wall. And it sounds like the only design change is that we can't have a second story on top of this.
The only thing I'm not expressing an opinion on is whether all your remainder of the addition meets the 65%.
But it
But
does.
everything that meets the 65%, you're okay on, other than the retaining wall, which isn't part of that calculation.
So that's the big addition is 65%. It's just that little sunroom addition.
If that's what it is, as long as you're less than, no more than 65%.
Okay.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break if the Walnut Street applicant can get set up, ready to go.
Thank you.
You got this one over here. Yeah, I can use that. You can do that after. Remind me.
Yeah, that's right.
I think you can do it after we approve whatever we approve. Let me look.
Okay, we're back on the record.
Okay, the next application is a continuation of the public hearing for the property located at 137 Walnut Street, the application of Victor Barkley and Khadija Barkley. Is everyone here eligible to vote, is I guess where I should...
Yes. Ms. Harris, I left you a signature. She has it. Yes, and Mr.
Okay.
Simon. Yes, so everyone here is eligible to vote.
Okay, Mr. Trembulak?
Thank you, Mr. Harrison, members of the board. Alan Trembulak appearing on behalf of the applicants Victor and Khadija Barkley. As Chairman already noted, this is a continuation of a hearing which we commenced on March 6th. As I think the board will recall, this is an application for a use variance relating to property located at 137 Walnut Street. The property we're dealing with is a very large lot, slightly in excess of a half an acre, which is located roughly in the middle of the block between Forest Street and North Fullerton. The zoning on that block is R2 two-family. In addition to being a rather large lot, the property is also unique in that it contains two existing buildings, an existing family at the front of the property on Walnut Street, and a rather large non-conforming commercial building to the rear of the lot. We've applied for a use variance to remove the non-conforming commercial building and essentially replace it with a new multifamily building. Just to remind the board, we filed this as a bifurcated application, so the only variance we're requesting in this application is the use variance to permit multifamily use in a two-family zone. If we're fortunate to obtain the board's approval on this application, we'll have to come back at a later date with a fully engineered and complete site plan application, and at that time we'd also seek approval for the few C variances that would be implicated by the application, which we'll discuss briefly throughout our presentation tonight. At the March meeting, we presented testimony from the project architect, John Guadagnoli, and we also presented expert traffic testimony from a traffic engineer, Corey Chase. The conclusion of that hearing, the board expressed some concerns about the project, I think primarily three. One being a concern that there were too many principal buildings on the property as we were proposing. Second, that the density was perhaps more than the board felt was reasonable. And third was the amount of impervious coverage. So since that application, we've submitted revised plans, which the board has and Mr. Guadagnoli will discuss tonight. And those plans, I think, go a long way to addressing the concerns that were raised by the board at the last meeting. I just want to make a couple of preliminary statements on behalf of my client. There was reference, the existing two-family has also contained a border apartment on the third floor. We've agreed to eliminate that border apartment as part of this application. As you can see, we kind of struggled with the number of units we're proposing in the rear. Again, the initial application had 4 in the large building and then a standalone townhouse building containing an additional unit. We've eliminated the townhouse unit, which allows for a much larger area of green space. And we, again, struggled over whether we should come before you with 4 units in that in the building in the rear, or 5. The plan before you contemplates 5. The benefit to that additional unit, not only, obviously, there's a benefit to the applicants, but there's also a public benefit, we believe, in that providing 5 units, one of those units would have to be affordable under the town's inclusionary zoning ordinance. Needless to say, that third floor could be converted from 2 units to 1 if the board felt that there was still too much density. We could obviously provide 4 units in that building, but we're seeking approval for 5, and again, one of those 5 would have to be affordable. We think the property can easily accommodate the 5 units that we're seeking, in addition to retaining the existing 2-family. So I have 2 witnesses to present tonight. First witness will be John Guadagnoli, who will discuss the revised plans and provide another PowerPoint for the board. And our second witness will be our professional planner, William Stimmel, who will provide testimony in support of the use variance.
Mr. Guadagnoli, you were sworn in at the March 6, 2019 hearing. You understand you're still under oath.
Yes, I do, thank you.
Just state your name and address for the record, please.
John Guadagnoli, 120 Walnut Street in Montclair.
John, you prepared another PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
For your testimony this evening? And we have a hard copy of that, correct?
Correct.
Which I'll mark, I think, at A3.
I believe we did. We had an A3, which was the traffic impact statement, so I think we're up to A4.
Okay, I apologize, we only have the one hard copy. We don't have individual copies for all the board members. You prepared revised plans for this project subsequent to the March meeting?
Yes.
Okay, and just for the record, those plans consist of 2 sheets with a revision date of April 2, 2019, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Would you please review the PowerPoint presentation that you have this evening, and hopefully include as part of the presentation perhaps a brief review of the initial plan, and then go into the new plan and show the differences and the changes that have been made.
Thank you. Hello? Yes, okay. Just as a quick reminder to the board, I'll just quickly go over the nature of the neighborhood. It was done 2 months ago, so I just a quick overview. Martha. The property in question is here, this odd-shaped puzzle piece you see. This is Walnut Street, where my pointer is, and you can see that the site is much bigger than any of the ones around it. It's 0.52 acres, and it's in the R2 zone. Next. Here it is again, and it's just a comparison of its size to the adjacent lots. The average lot size on Walnut is 5,500 square feet. Ours is 22,000 square feet. And in the neighboring area, aside from two family homes, there's a 12-unit apartment right on the corner across the street here on lot 1. Here on lot 4, there's an 8-family. And here on this corner, it's about 16 families, but that's in another zone. But just to give you a sense of what the density nature is. And right next door to us here on this lot is a 3-family. So there's a spattering of properties that exceed 2-family in the area. Just a quick picture of what's there now. This is the house in question, number 137. It's got a driveway on the left, and if you look at the right-hand view, it's got a driveway on the right as well. So this house happens to have 2 driveways already. This building on the right is the one at the 3-story next door. And this driveway goes all the way to the back
where there's that commercial building. You might see that little red building back there. There it is. Here it is up close. This is the current commercial building that's back there. It is used as an auto detailing place. Before that, it was belonged to a paving company. So there's always been a commercial use there. Also existing on the site to the right, on the right side, is a two-car garage with this kind of a doghouse on top of it. It exists. It's there. It's off to the right side in this right here. You can see in this little alcove here. So where I'm pointing is the existing commercial building. The two-car garage is here, and the existing house is right up here on Walnut Street, adjacent to all the others. That's it. Okay, this is an aerial view. The green is the house, our 137, the existing structure, and these are the adjacent houses that are in orange. And you could see that this property juts way into the backyards of all the other houses. It's kind of just a big lot, a big massive lot on it. And this building number 1 here is the Vasquez Apartments. This is the 12th family right here. And directly across the street, this is the 8 unit, number 2. And number 3 is down here on this corner. So just to give you an idea of what I was talking about before. Last thing I want to say is this red building is the existing commercial structure that's on the lot, and this green one is that little garage. You can see the structures in question and their distances to the adjacent dwellings around the block on Forest and Fullerton. Okay, now I'm going to get into the revisions we made between last application and this one, the changes that we made. Okay. In the application originally, we had called for this to be right here, a 4-unit building, and next to it a single-unit townhouse. This being, of course, the existing building, and this being the garage. And you can see these were the drawings of the townhouses, and these were the drawings submitted for the 4-family. This is the red building back here. Next. The new plan calls for the total elimination of the townhouse, and this 4-unit becomes a 5, but instead of 4 two-bedroom units, it's going to be 3 two-bedroom units and 2 one-bedroom units. So it's fewer bedrooms, but split among 5 instead of 4. And the other thing we're doing is this garage, which had that doghouse effect on it, we're just converting, we're getting rid of that second story on the garage and bringing it into compliance with the ordinance, which states that an accessory structure can't exceed 15 feet. We're lower than 15 feet with the new design. The old design is 18 feet. So we're making something that was non-compliant, at least in terms of height.
Just while you're talking about that, John,
Yes.
is the existing garage a commercial garage, or a garage that appears to be a commercial?
I'm not aware of. It appears to be commercial because it has a flat roof. Yes, it doesn't have like a residential look to it, and that's why the garage we're proposing would. It would have like a peak in the front, gable in the front, and and it would just look like a typical 2-car Montclair garage instead of like a more commercial looking thing.
That was my question.
Right. This is an aerial view of, again, what we submitted last time. Here's the 4-unit, here's the townhouse, here's the garage unchanged. In the new scheme, here's the 5-unit, but this becomes a garden now. And this garage, you can see, the roof, there's a new roof that's compliant, and, it has that residential look. The amount of impervious coverage is greatly reduced. We now have about 1,100 square feet more grass and non-pervious area than before due to this change, because the elimination of the townhouse was about 800 square feet just there. Plus, we lost some blacktop and driveway, so it came up to over 1,000 square feet, closer to 1,100. Okay, next. This is the view as you're coming down the proposed driveway, where you have this townhouse and then the 4-unit. Again, this townhouse was separate from it and created an alley effect, and well, now this is what you'd see when you came down exactly the same driveway. Here's the 5-unit, but there's nothing here but a green space. Beyond are the garages belonging to the adjacent properties, which abut our property.
Is that meant to show the view from Walnut Street? Someone was walking down Walnut or driving past the property?
Yes, well, this is, we've gone up the driveway a little bit, but I have a video of what that will look like. But yes, this is to the right of the structure. This is the right-hand driveway, the entry driveway. So as you drove in or walked in, this is what you'd see. You'd have kind of a carriage house look here, and then the 5 units are all inside this 3-story building.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when you drive down Walnut Street now and you look down that driveway, you have a very clear view of the red commercial building.
That's correct. It occupies the entire view. In fact, it's directly in line with the driveway. That's right. Yes. So we would eliminate the garden you see here now currently is occupied by that red commercial building. That's right. This is a comparison of what this garage looks like now and what it will look like when done. So we're proposing to keep the garage, but, make it a residential garage. Okay. Okay, this is what we're proposing now in detail. Okay. Okay. So this is the 5-unit structure with a whole garden in the back. The garage here, the house stays. And I could go through some of the numbers, but as I said, we've greatly reduced the amount of impervious coverage because we lost building and we lost blacktop and driveway. So, not driveway, sorry, walkway. So we went in the right direction.
Well, just to focus on that for a minute, John, what is the requirement in the R2 zone for maximum building coverage?
25%.
What is the building coverage?
It's 20.
Provided on the new plan?
I have it here. It's 23.6%, whereas before it was at 20. It was like 28%. So
you went from a non-conforming condition to a conforming one in this new plan.
That's correct. Yes. Yes.
And do you have any of the details? And if you may have already stated them, but I may have missed it. The details regarding the reduction in overall impervious coverage.
Yes.
Of the site.
The amount of structure we have is reduced between the older submission and this by 727 square feet, and the amount of impervious coverage, walks and drives, is reduced by 425 square feet. That combined makes for 1,152 square feet more grass and landscaping as per before. The other thing we eliminated, which I want to mention, is that in the previous submission, when we had the townhouse here, we were in violation of the side yard setback, because in the R2 zone, you need 6 feet on one side and 10 on the other. We were proposing 6 and 6. Well, now with the elimination of this townhouse, we have the 6 here, but we have like 47 here now. So we lost the side yard setback requirement, a variance that we were applying for. So we lost 2 variances between the last submission and this one. Side yard and the other one.
Building coverage.
Building coverage, thank you. And the building coverage, right. In addition, we brought the garage over here, the existing garage, into compliance in terms of the height, even though it was pre-existing. But
The garage is still non-conforming.
For setback,
setback,
yes.
but that's an existing condition.
Right. The side and rear yard, you need 6 feet, and this is far less, yes. Okay.
Just before you move on, John, just some quick questions. There's no change in terms of ingress and egress to the site, correct?
Right, correct. For vehicles, you mean, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
And site circulation remains the same?
That's right. Here's Walnut Street, and you enter the same way as before. You come around and you exit this way. Again, this is an existing driveway. That's an even the curb cuts are existing. So it's already there. The difference, of course, all hinges on this townhouse we eliminated. And, this has the parking below, hidden. As far as parking, I want to say that most of the parking is hidden. There are eight parking spots internal, and then there are 2 inside this garage, and all the rest are hidden behind the existing building or here behind this corner where these 2 are. So you really, when you're looking down the site, do not see very much in the way of like bumpers and headlights and windshields. You just see blacktop, yes, that's just driveway, but that's it.
And the number of parking spaces hasn't changed from the previous plan, is that right?
Well, it has. We lost 2 because we lost the townhouse. So the townhouse required 2, we lost those 2.
Okay.
That's it.
And so the total number of spaces provided on this revised plan?
17.
All right. And does that comply with the parking requirement?
Yes, it does. It's in the revised parking count that we did, yes. Because each of these units has 2, and the house here has 5, actually. That's 1 extra more than it needs. And and then there's 2 extras here, like it could be guest parking or whatever,
By the way, just with respect to impervious, one final question. There's a substantial paved area in the rear of the site as it exists today, is that right?
That's correct.
Do you know what do you have any idea what the percentage of impervious coverage is
now?
Today?
Oh, yeah, as we speak, yes. It's 8,000 square feet, which puts it at just under 1/3. About like 30%.
Okay. And where the new plan will provide for a reduction in the impervious coverage over what exists today. Is that
It's
right?
7,700.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's 400 less now than proposed earlier.
Okay. Next slide.
What I prepared next is it's just a video that'll take you on like a kind of a little walk through the lot, so you can see the internal workings of the lot from all angles. I hate technology. That's it. Here we go.
Okay.
So this is walking or driving down the entry drive. On the right, you can see the 4-foot buffer that's required that it doesn't have now. There's the garage on the right, the revised garage. And as you enter the site, you can see the direction of travel by the arrow here. This building was designed to resemble a sort of townhouse with, an apartment above kind of thing. And it's a 3-story structure. And as we pan around, you can see this area here where the garden is where that red building is right now. The property to the west of us is higher than we are, so there is an existing retaining wall, but we would add further low retaining walls to kind of step it down. There's the garage again. Okay, it's up again. You can see the garage is on higher ground. You can see the sloping land as it comes down because of the natural grade. And now, if you parked your car or got off the train and wanted to come home, you'd go down this walkway, and the entrance to the facility is on the left, right there, under this arbor. And again, I want to stress that this whole area right now is covered by a red building, a red commercial building, and it will just be turned to green. This is the Heidi Dawes building, the one that's one lot away. It's like a commercial structure there, and as you spin around, you can see the backs of these garages. These garages are very industrial in nature. They're concrete block, flat roofs, so we would seek to plant and disguise as much as possible. We're also proposing a fence on top of the retaining wall, again, for the benefit of the people next door so they don't fall off. And we're just going to spin around and just show you what the building looks like from the other side, from the property looking toward the front. Sorry, it's a little slow, but okay. There's the driveway that goes to Walnut Street, right there. And this is the existing building, that gray, and this is the structure we're proposing. It's about 6,500 square feet in total, and that's it. This is looked at from the other side. Oh, that's it. And I just have a couple still pictures to show you, views of the building from other sides to give you an appreciation for, how the neighbors see it and so forth. Yeah, okay, this is from the garage looking toward the west face of the building, and the entrance is there too. This is from the air, and you can see the garden back here. This is one of those existing garages. This is our garage right there. And, this is the aerial view. And next. This is from the southeast. You can see an existing garage on over here. There's an existing flat roof garage. This is our building. It's 10 feet away at this point, but only 6 feet away at the fire stair. And we just put a balcony here to kind of cut the massing off the corner. And it's a very residential. It's got a hip roof. Looks like it could be any Montclair. Next. This is the view from the neighbor's yard. What the neighbor would see. These trees, by the way, are not things we're proposing. They're already there. This is the garage. That one car or 2-car garage, I think it is.
That would be on Forest Street, right?
Yes, that's right. That's right. This is one of the property on Forest. And again, this is what they would sort of see. They would just catch the corner of this building. And next. And this is the exit driveway. This is what you see if you're walking down Walnut to the left of the house, looking down the driveway as cars exit. And, again, the idea was that this building was placed so that most of it is hidden behind the existing house. You don't even really see it unless you croon your head down the driveways. But else it's just cleverly hidden back there, and there are some just repetitive garage doors. Again, kind of a carriage house look, trying to get there. And that's it. Thank you.
Just one final question, John.
Yeah.
Regarding the height of the building, has that changed at all from the previous plan?
No, it maxes out at 35 feet, maybe a little less, but no more than 35,
35 feet is the maximum permitted.
Permitted in the R2 zone, that's correct.
So the building complies with the height requirement.
Yes.
There is a variance triggered, though, because it's 3 stories, whereas 2.5 is permitted.
That's correct.
Right?
That's right.
Okay. Nothing further for Mr. Vodignoli.
Questions, members of the board?
So the red building is going to be, I'm over here. Red building will be, is going to be torn down?
That's correct, yes. Right now, that red building, by the way, it's beyond the property line. Part of it exceeds the property line, is on the neighbor's land. By like a foot in one area and about 18 inches in another. It's actually exceeds the property line. So the new building will be at the closest 15 feet, at the closest, and further in other areas, yeah.
So there'll be no problem with emergency vehicles and all that getting back there?
The traffic expert who testified last week said that the driveways comply, you know, with the regulations. Yeah.
Other questions from members of the board? Just one, the area behind the multifamily building, is that also going to be landscaped? There you have it's rough 15 feet.
Yes, it's all green, yes.
Because I guess that shows that. Is it, do you have a landscaping plan, or?
Well, if you go to the very beginning. That's good. Here, you see here, it's all landscaped around the back here.
Is there anything showing what's going to be planted there? I mean,
Well, that's part of the,
that'll be part of the
bifurcated.
site plan application. Okay.
Right.
Any other questions from members of the board? Okay. Are there any members of the audience who have questions for this witness? Okay. Alan, want to call your next witness?
Yes, William Stimmel.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
I do.
State your name and address, please.
William Stimmel, P.O. Box 280, Rutherford, New Jersey.
Mr. Stimmel, you're a professional planner of the state of New Jersey, correct?
Yes, I am.
And you recently testified before this board, I believe, in connection with the application of Berkshire Hathaway?
Yes, I think it was 695 Bloomfield Avenue.
Okay. Will the board accept his qualifications as a professional planner? Thank you.
Thank you.
You were retained by the applicant to provide expert testimony regarding the use variance that's being requested, is that correct?
I was, yes.
All right, and can you tell us what you reviewed, what you did, what you reviewed in preparing for your testimony this evening?
Certainly. I took a look at the existing conditions on the subject property and in the surrounding neighborhood. I reviewed the plans prepared by Mr. Guadagnoli and the application package from Mr. Trembulac, as well as the Montclair zoning ordinance.
Okay. Did you also review the master plan?
I did, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Would you begin your discussion, your analysis, by starting with the existing conditions on the site?
Certainly. There's going to be a little bit of rehash with the testimony provided by the applicant, but I'll just go through this quickly. As noted, the subject property consists of an irregularly shaped lot which has a total area of 22,830 square feet, so it's just a hair over half an acre. The site is currently developed with an existing two-family residence along the Walnut Street frontage of the property and a separate detached commercial building at the rear of the property. So the site currently has two principal buildings. That commercial building at the rear of the property is used by an auto detailing business, and then in addition to the two principal buildings, there is a separate accessory building, a detached garage located on the westerly portion of the site. The main site driveway is located to the west of the existing residential building. It's narrow for two-way traffic, but it serves two-way traffic, leads to the rear of that building and the paved parking area there, as well as to the commercial building and the detached garage at the rear of the property. A second driveway is provided to the east of the building, and it's what you would have at a typical residence. It's a one-lane driveway where you pull into the driveway and back out onto Walnut Street.
I think Mr. Guadagnoli reviewed the surrounding uses on Walnut Street and the adjacent streets. Is there anything you might want to add to testimony he provided in terms of your impressions of the surrounding neighborhood?
I would say that I generally agree with the testimony provided by the project architect. I did note the presence of the two apartment buildings across Walnut Street from where the site is located. The one at the northeast corner of the intersection of Fullerton Avenue and Walnut Street provides 14 units. The one more or less opposite the site across Walnut Street provides 8 units. Generally, the neighborhood is a mixture of 1- and 2-family residences with a number of additional apartment buildings. As you go west on Walnut Street past the site across Fullerton Avenue, halfway down the next block, you move into the OR3 zone. The OR3 zone is a garden apartment and office zone, which allows offices, of course, as well as multifamily dwellings up to 18 units per acre on 12,000 square lots. Going to the east of the site, once you cross Forest Street, you move into the C2 general business and light manufacturing zone as you get closer to the Walnut Street station. It allows for a variety of commercial uses, including but not limited to retail, warehouse and storage, light manufacturing, residential, office, and restaurant. And generally speaking, the development patterns in those zones do comply with the requirements of the ordinance, again, just in a very general sense. So the site is located in the 2-family zone, although there is a mixture of uses nearby, certainly more intense uses, especially as you get closer to the Walnut Street station.
Would you review the applicant's proposal?
Yes, the applicant is not proposing to make any changes to the existing 2-family residence, aside from the fact that the border unit on the 3rd floor is going to be eliminated, as Mr. Trembulak had indicated. The commercial building to the rear of the property is going to be eliminated. It has been noted that that building extends onto the adjoining parcel, so that encroachment will be eliminated when the building is demolished, and any necessary easements for the demolition will be obtained at that time. The previously proposed townhouse, which was to be a 3rd principal building on the site, has been eliminated from the proposal. Rather, the applicant is consolidating all 5 proposed units in the 3-story residential building, which will be located more or less to the rear of the existing residential structure on the site, with about 50 feet separating the 2 buildings. The existing detached garage is going to be modified to eliminate the 2nd floor, reduce the height to 13.67 feet, and give it more of a residential appearance and nature. In addition, there will be striped parking spaces added to the rear of the site and extensive landscaping to be provided at the southern portion of the site. The chairman had asked a question about a landscaping plan, and I'm sure many of the board members have questions about landscaping, lighting, drainage, and other site issues, all of which will be addressed should the board look favorably on the application for the use variance tonight when the subsequent site plan application is submitted.
Okay. Would you next review the zoning for the property and the applicable portions of the Montclair zoning ordinance that pertain to this property and this application?
Certainly. The site, again, is located in the R2 2-family zone. Permitted uses in the R2 zone are primarily 1- and 2-family dwellings, as well as municipal facilities subject to site plan review. That comes from Chapter 347-47 of the Montclair Ordinance. So the existing 2-family residence at the front of the property is permitted use. However, the existing auto detailing business located in the detached, in the commercial building at the rear of the site is not a permitted use. The applicant is proposing 7 residential units on the subject property. They are required to obtain a variance for use which is not permitted in the zone pursuant to 40:55D-70D1. That's the reason the applicant's here tonight, and in fact, the only reason the applicant's here tonight, because this is a bifurcated application. They're requesting that D1 variance relief.
And can you review the statutory criteria that are applicable to use variance application, and then discuss the criteria and your opinion as to whether the application meets the criteria?
Certainly. As the board members, I'm sure, are all well familiar, the applicant has to show that the positive and negative criteria have been satisfied in order to grant the requested use variance relief. In this case, there are two aspects to the positive criteria. The first relates to the suitability of the site for the development which is proposed, and the second relates to the purposes of zoning, showing that the purposes of zoning have been advanced or would be advanced if the relief were granted. So I found 5 different reasons why the site is particularly suited for the application and the development which is proposed. First and most significantly, to my mind, the applicant is going to eliminate a non-conforming use from the residential zone. As I had said, the proposed use is also a non-conforming use. However, the matter of the proposed residential use being non-conforming is a matter of intensity, whereas with the existing commercial use, it relates to the very nature of the use itself. So you would be bringing the use on the subject property closer to the permitted uses in the zone by the elimination of that commercial use from the subject property. Second reason is because we have a very large property here. Again, it's over 22,000, almost 23,000 square feet. The site can accommodate the construction of the proposed 5-unit residential structure, still have adequate areas for setbacks, parking, and landscaping. By providing the 5 units, the applicant can offer one affordable housing unit to be provided on the subject property as part of the development rather than making a monetary contribution to the municipality. Third is that the density of the proposed development will generally be in keeping with the existing zoning and with the lots in the surrounding area. Mr. Guadagnoli had showed that chart which gave the average of the property sizes in the immediately surrounding area. It was roughly 6,000 square feet. So based on that calculation, I believe he indicated that a total of 9 units could be constructed on the property, applying that 2-unit development level to the average 6,000 square foot lot. The applicant is only proposing to keep the existing 2 units and add 5 units, a total of 7, so it would be less than that density. As the architect testified to extensively, the mass of the structure will be hidden to a large extent from the frontage roadways, both by the existing structures surrounding it and the position of the building itself behind the existing residence on the subject property. As I had stated before, the proposed residential building is going to be 50 feet behind the existing residential structure on the site, or approximately 125 feet from the existing curb line on Walnut Street. And then finally, the last reason is that by eliminating the existing non-conforming commercial building, we can eliminate those setbacks from that commercial building onto the adjoining sites. So those are the 5 reasons why I found the site to be particularly suited for the proposed development. In addition, I found 4 purposes of zoning that are advanced by the project. Purpose A is to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. We'd be eliminating the incompatible commercial use and providing an affordable housing unit on the subject property, both of which would advance the general welfare. The second purpose is Purpose C, which is to provide adequate light, air, and open space. The proposed site development generally complies with and/or improves upon existing setback and coverage requirements. Purpose E is to promote the establishment of appropriate population densities and concentrations that will contribute to the well-being of persons, neighborhoods, communities, and regions, and preservation of the environment. Again, I believe that the density of the proposed development is generally in keeping with the existing development pattern in the zone. And then finally, Purpose I, which is to promote a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design and arrangement. So we'd be eliminating the existing commercial building from the property, eliminating or reducing the height of the existing detached garage on the property, providing a new building at the rear of the site that has a residential appearance, altering the garage so that that also has a residential appearance, and then both of those structures would be more effectively hidden based on their location within the site and based on the location of the existing residence at the front of the property. Second part of the justification for the use variance relief is the negative criteria, that the application can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and will not impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. Again, based on my review of the application, I don't believe that there will be any detriment to the public good. think many of the issues that people have with incompatible uses in residential zones relate to traffic, noise, glare, and other such factors, none of which will really be applicable to the subject property. And as I had stated earlier, I think that the proposed development will be more in keeping with the intent of the residential zone where the site is located, and therefore would not be detrimental to the zone plan and zoning ordinance. And then finally, the applicant has to address the emission use from those permitted in the zone. And I think, as I had stated a number of times already, that we are proposing something that is more in keeping with the nature of the zone, and the development is merely non-permitted use based on the intensity of the development rather than the nature of the development itself. So for all those reasons, I believe the board would be justified in granting, excuse me, the requested use variance relief.
Okay. Although we're not seeking approval for the C variances, I wonder if you could just take a couple of minutes and just briefly identify the C variances that are implicated by virtue of this revised plan.
Wouldn't we do that, Mr. Tremulak, as part of the site plan review? Because those really aren't in front of us now.
Well, I know, I'm not looking to justify them, but just have him identify what there are, because, I mean, the purpose being that there are essentially 4 principal variances, and 3 involve existing conditions. And I just thought he might reference that, because I think it goes to the suitability of this, the overall issue of the site suitability, in terms of the number of additional C variances or nonconformities that are triggered by virtue of this plan. And again, I just wanted him to indicate what those variances were, not to justify them at this time.
I mean,
That we can defer that.
Well, no, I mean, if you can do that, but understand that as part of the site plan review, you're going to have to meet the proofs at that time. I mean, the board would, if this is approved as a condition, would say you have to go get site plan approval and any
absolutely.
requisite bulk variances, just, you know.
We don't disagree at all. Are you able to answer that question?
I think so, yes.
And probably in the time we just went back and forth, but go ahead.
And I understood that we would need to make those arguments if and when the board approves this application. There were 5 variances noted in Mr. Petto's letter, and I don't believe that I or anyone on the project team takes issue with any of them. The first is the maximum number of principal buildings where 1 is permitted. Again, 2 are existing on the subject property, the residence at the front of the site and the commercial building at the rear of the site. We'd basically be swapping the commercial building out for a second residential building, maintaining those 2 principal buildings on the site. The maximum building height, where 2.5 stories are permitted, 3 stories are proposed for the residential structure. Again, the height of the building in feet is in keeping with the existing residential structure on the property and falls at or below the height requirement in feet. The minimum rear yard setback, where 25% of the lot depth is required, or 64.5 feet in this case, so that measures from the property line along Walnut Street all the way to the deepest part of the property. So even though the proposed building doesn't line up with that deepest part of the property, that's still how the rear yard setback is calculated. I'd note that the existing rear setback from the commercial building is 0 feet or less than 0 feet because it encroaches onto the neighbor's property. 15.3 feet are proposed. The minimum accessory setback, where 6 feet is required, 0 feet are provided to the rear lot line, 2.55 feet rather to the side lot line are existing and proposed. I believe this is more of a technical variance because the location of the building, the size of the building isn't changed other than the fact that the height of that detached garage is being reduced. And then finally, the maximum fence height, where 4.5 feet are permitted and 6 feet are existing and proposed. So those are the C variances which the board is not voting on tonight.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
I guess I kind of view your testimony as generic. I guess I'm looking at what justifies 5 units versus 4 units versus 6 units what is the appropriate density for this property?
Well, I believe that the applicant has provided sufficient justification, but ultimately, of course, that's for the board to vote on. I think the density is really the crux of the matter here. I think that the board members, I would imagine, would agree that the applicant could reasonably be allowed to do something at the rear of the property in exchange for eliminating that commercial building. I think the two things that work in the applicant's favor that would not apply if this were a generic 23,000 square foot lot is the fact that you've got that existing large commercial building at the rear of the property, and the fact that the applicant can provide that 5-unit building on the site while increasing the landscaping, decreasing the impervious coverage, more or less meeting the setback requirements for the building, and thereby keeping the 5-unit on site, keeping the affordable unit on the site as well. So I think that would be what separates this property from a generic larger lot in this zone.
But that's still, and I'm looking for the rationale from you as to what gets us 5 units in this building, a total of 7, as to, why is that justifiable versus doing 4 units in this building?
Well, again, I think the arguments are, as I had stated them, the difference between 4 and 5 from the applicant's perspective is that you've got the benefit of the affordable unit on site rather than in some other location in a different part of Montclair. Part of the idea is to make the affordable units part of the community rather than congregating in one location, which I think this site allows us to do.
Other questions from members of the board? Mr. Simon?
So you mentioned there'll be 2 one-bedroom apartments. So are both going to be for affordable, or just the one is being allocated for as designated as an affordable unit?
The proposal would be to provide one affordable unit in the building at the rear of the site, which would fully comply with all the requirements of the Montclair ordinance. I think probably that would be something that would be solidified at the time of the application for the site plan, should the board look favorably on this application.
And are the 2 one-bedrooms proposed to be equal in size?
That would probably be a better question for the architect.
Yes. Yes, they are. Very close. I mean, within 50 square feet or so. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Here, you can see them here. Here's the one. This is the 3rd floor. Here's the one, and here's the other. So you can see the, and there's the stairs. So you can see that the 2 sides are about the same.
Other questions from members of the board? Okay, are there any members of the audience who have questions for this witness?
You want to ask for comments also?
I'm going to do
Okay.
that. Are there any members of the audience who have either testimony, comments, anything you want to say about this application? Mr. Tremblay, do you have anything further?
Yeah, if I can briefly sum up, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think based on the testimony we've presented, I believe we've provided more than adequate evidence to support the use variance we're requesting. I'd like to talk about site suitability and also try to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, as to what's the appropriate density. I mean, this lot is, I believe, almost 4 times the size, the average lot size of other properties in the neighborhood. The average lot size, I believe, is 5,700 square feet. We're almost 23,000. So if you look at that proportionately, if we had a conventional property of this size, rectangular in shape, for instance, where it could be subdivided, and I'm not suggesting this property can be, but if you had a lot of 23,000 square feet And the average lot size is less than 6,000 square feet, and I think the minimum lot size requirement would be 6,000. You know, proportionately, you've got two-family dwellings on lots that average less than 6,000. This property is almost 4 times the size of those other properties, so I think can easily support a minimum of 6 units, if not 7. I mean, what the magic number is, I think, obviously, that's up to the board. We've proposed 5 units in the building. As I said in my opening comments, that's obviously of a benefit to my clients. I'm not going to try to, to say it's not, but it also provides a community benefit in that it triggers the obligation to provide one affordable unit of housing, which we would do, rather than a lesser number of units where there would just be a monetary contribution to the town's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So the site is suitable and can easily accommodate the number of units. We have more than adequate parking. We've got sufficient circulation. There's minimal impact on traffic based on the testimony of the traffic expert. You're talking about a handful of additional vehicles entering from Walnut Street or exiting onto Walnut Street during peak hours. Nothing noticeable, certainly nothing that would rise to a level of a substantial detriment. And, I wanted to identify the variances because I think it's important because it kind of goes to the overall site suitability. We're compliant. We're able to comply with most of the bulk and other requirements under the township zoning ordinance. We have essentially 4 non-compliant conditions, but 3 involve existing nonconformities. The existing commercial building, in addition to being a non-conforming commercial building, is right on the property line to the rear. We're still need a rear yard variance, but we're improving that condition, by removing the non-conforming commercial, and we're providing for a 15-foot setback from the rear, whereas currently there's none. Similarly, we have the non-conforming garage that's been there for many, many years. It's an existing non-conforming condition. We're improving that. We're improving it by reducing the height, so at least the height of the building is conforming, and also improving the visual appearance of it, so it looks like a residential structure as opposed to what it currently looks like. And then the only other variance really, there's a fence variance, which is not critical by any means to the application if the board were to decide that 6-foot fence is inappropriate, the project would go on. But the only other variance is with respect to the number of stories. And the building height complies with the height requirement, but we have 3 stories versus 2.5. But those are the only nonconformities, and I think that goes to the overall issue of site suitability. I'm not going to repeat the special reasons that Mr. Stimmel identified that satisfy the special reasons required for granting the variance. Obviously, providing the affordable unit is a benefit. Eliminating the non-conforming commercial structure, which is visible from the street, is also a benefit to the public. We're reducing the amount of impervious coverage. We're increasing green space. The new building has been intentionally positioned in a way that it's hardly visible from the street. It's blocked by the existing 2-family, whereas now you're driving down or walking down Walnut Street, rather than looking down that driveway and seeing a red non-conforming commercial building, you would see green space appearing to be a backyard of a commercial property, which is exactly what it is. With respect to the negative criteria, I think the most significant thing to me is that there's not one member of the public that appeared and expressed any objection to this application. As Mr. Stimmel noted, there's no detriment, certainly no substantial detriment. The minimal amount of additional traffic, we're providing adequate parking. There's not going to be any noise or other negative impacts on the adjacent properties. And those adjacent properties, particularly on Forest Street, are very deep lots where the houses are located very close to Forest Street. And then at least one of them, and I think maybe more than one, have garages that are very much to the rear, which would butt up and provide a buffer to the new building that we're proposing. So, for all of those reasons, I think we've provided more than adequate proof to satisfy the positive and the negative criteria to justify the use variance that we're requesting. And if granted, as we all know, we would come back with a fully engineered site plan, full landscaping, lighting, and other details that you would need to see in order to finally approve this project. So, thank you very much.
Start discussion with Mr. Fronti.
I'm in favor of the application. I think you've presented more than enough evidence to satisfy the statutory criteria, and I agree that this site is suitable for an additional structure, given its size, and it's awkwardly shaped, so it's difficult to develop, but we've come up with a great design, and I think by eliminating the townhouse, it's improved it substantially, opened up space, reducing impervious coverage. So, for all the reasons presented, I'm in favor of this application.
Mr. Church?
I'd be in favor of the application coming forward with the required site plans, landscape details, and so forth. I believe the criteria, all the criteria of good planning is met with this project, particularly in that area. So I would be in favor of seeing an application come to us that would allow us to vote on this application.
Mr. Moore?
I'm in favor of the application in regards to what's been presented today. I, too, just like my colleague, look forward to what you will be presenting in the future. But for the most part, I think that this is a fantastic idea and design to continue with the development of that area. So I'm in favor, and good job.
Mr. Reynolds?
I'm in favor of the application. I think this is a vast improvement from the original application. I think there's a lot of thought put into reducing the impervious coverage on the site and how this set of structures will relate to the rest of the neighborhood. And so generally I'm in favor of this version. I look forward to seeing the final plan for full approval.
Mr. Allen?
I'm in favor, and I also look forward to the final site plan.
I echo views of my colleagues, and I also approve.
Caulfield?
I too am in favor.
Ms. Harris?
I'm in favor of the D variance, and I would just say, as you're planning the site, I would just give thought to pedestrian access to the back of the rear building.
Mr. Simon?
I am in favor of the application.
I'm going to give you a hard time for a little bit. I guess my philosophical problem is, obviously there's a justification for granting a variance for the two principal structures and granting a variance for one of them being more than a two-family. We're not ruling, I mean, by definition, we're ruling on the two principal structures, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, which I think is a D variance anyway,
Yeah, so I
yeah.
think, the question is, I asked the planner is, how do you get to a specific number of units? And I am not untroubled by, if you do what would be the normal lot size of 6,000, you would get 3+ units. If you do, the ordinance allows you, as part of a township community development program, which this isn't, but I would still look to that, reduce the lot size to 4,000 square feet, which gets you 5 units, but that's not getting you to 7 units. So I'm a little troubled by, how you get there. I think, we had previously approved a variance in Upper Montclair where we deviated from the density requirements, and part of the justification for that was they were providing 5 units and hence an affordable unit on-site. I think that same rationale is here. I think the other aspect, which also came into play with the Upper Montclair variance, was that was proximity to the Upper Montclair train station. This property with a proximity to the Walnut Street train station, I think justifies the increased density that they're in favor of. I think, just to give you a hint, I remain unconvinced as to the desirability of retaining the existing garage structure. I'm not expressing a definitive view, but I'm not convinced of that, just to give you a heads up, that should be addressed specifically when you come back the site plan. The one condition we should impose on this is what they said at the beginning, that the existing border apartment in the existing building be eliminating.
It should also be subject to Montclair Code Section 347, Article 26, inclusionary zoning, and also subject to site plan approval.
Right. Okay, someone want to make a motion?
I motion to approve the application.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I think we can do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Then the next applicant gets set up. So hopefully we can go home. Some of us have to switch hats and appear before a Board of Adjustment tomorrow. Newark.
Can we take a break? Oops, I just stopped it.
Still 5:15.
Hey, we're gonna clear out this.
Okay, so more than one person will rate.
It should be a date. Okay.
I could just have this discussion with somebody. Oh, you wait, I have an applicant. Missing the June 5th meeting. That's one of the variances. I just wanted to go over the And I said, no, it's.
Are they ready? Okay, I think we're ready to start. McCullough.
We need to. Like this.
Oh, we need Al. And a frontie. Okay. Next, I think maybe the last one. We're missing one person. This was easy.
Oh, okay. My youngest is gonna say, too small of a world.
Yeah, I have it. Did it back here. Honestly, we're out of seats in here. Felicia was here, we don't have a seat.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we're also missing a board member, so
Yes, okay, no worries.
I was hoping he would return before you return, but the next application is that of Redeemer Church of Montclair for property at 19 North Willis Street and 23 North Willis Street. This is an application for amended site plan approval to permit the installation of an entry door and stairs on the northerly side of the building addition. The property is designated on the township tax maps as block 3,208, lots 2 and 3. The property is located in the R2 two-family zone. Is notice in order?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Trembulac, are we trying to set a record for the most times an applicant can appear in the shortest period? Okay, you could move on.
We're back again for minor revisions to the approved site plan. As I think you all know, the addition is well underway, and there are several amendments to the site plan that we're seeking, and I'm just going to have Paul Sionis, the project architect, tell you what they are and explain the reasons for changes.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
I do.
State your name and address, please.
My name is Paul Sionis. My address is 8 Hillside Avenue, Montclair, New Jersey.
Paul, would you discuss the site plan revisions that the church is seeking in this application?
Sure. As Mr. Tremulak stated, there's a request for a revision to the approved site plan, and 3 items are part of this request. The first is that the church is asking, in lieu of one of the pairs of windows on the north side first floor of the new addition, that they would like to substitute one pair of doors in order to have access, direct access to the side yard. The second item is that they'd like to place a natural gas generator on the roof. The generator would be 28.6 inches high, parapet walls are 3'6" to 3'10" inches. The church encountered water flowing under the existing church building, heading in a west to east direction, directly under the center of the existing church. So they need to have pumps. Well, they've installed pumps in the new basement of the new addition, and therefore they'd like to put a generator on the roof as backup for the electricity. And then the third change is to the retaining wall along the north property line. The original site plan approval, a poured concrete retaining wall was placed directly on the northerly property line. The applicant would like to change that wall to a stacked masonry retaining wall that would not require a footing or require disturbance of the neighbor to the north's driveway. So with the poured concrete wall, it required a footing, would require disturbance to the neighbor's asphalt driveway, which is directly to the north of this subject property. So the applicant would like to install a modular block wall instead of the poured concrete wall. They could step it back away from the neighbor's property line. So it's the three items that are being requested. Number one was to install the pair of doors in lieu of the existing, in lieu of the windows that were approved, and the purpose of the doors is to provide access to that side yard. The gas generator, because they've encountered water, they want to have a backup in case the electricity goes out. And then the third thing is the change to the retaining wall along the north property line. As far as the substitution of the doors for the windows, there's still proposed to be the evergreen hedge continuously along the northern property line. It's still the evergreen skip laurels planted at a height of 48 inches to 60 inches. They'll form a dense hedge. We discussed at the October zoning board meeting in 2017 that they could easily be maintained at 8 feet in height above the ground level. In addition to those skip laurels, a solid wood 6-foot-high fence is also proposed along that northerly property line. So there should be little impact to the neighboring property because of the proposed 6-foot solid wood fence and the continuous row of skip laurels.
Well, in other words, the door would not likely be visible from the adjacent property.
It will not be correct.
Okay, and this just provides another means of egress from the building. The side yard is accessible from other existing exits from the building, correct?
That's correct. The side yards, they could still walk from the front entrance to this building, walk around the front of the building to the side yard. They're strictly asking for a convenience item to have a two doors in place of the two windows on the side. In addition to the doors, it'd be a stoop and steps with 3 risers to get down to that side yard.
And what's the building setback on that side?
Building setback is 28 feet from the northerly property line.
Is the applicant proposing any structures or any other items in that side yard?
No.
Okay.
It would be a lawn side yard with the skip laurels along the property line, and then as per the zoning board approval, there would be 2 trees proposed in that side yard. One was to be a red maple tree at the northeast corner, and in the northwest corner of that side yard was to be a shadblow serviceberry tree.
I believe the applicant was proposing, correct me if I'm wrong, and we have Pastor Ying here, to perhaps put a picnic table out there to just allow outdoor seating for staff during lunch hours on nice days such as today.
Do you want to swear?
I'm sorry.
Pastor?
Would you raise your right hand and you swear to tell the truth of the matter pending before the board?
Yes.
State your name and address.
Yeah, Daniel Ying on 19 North Willow Street, Montclair.
Pastor, could you just answer the question I just asked of Paul and perhaps supplement his testimony in terms of what you're looking to do, if anything, with that side yard and why you...
Sure. You know, we have a nice side yard now, and we want to enjoy it. We enjoy it otherwise, but door directly accessing the side yard would be more convenient and enable us to more conveniently enjoy that side yard. Much like a home residence is asking for a side door to a yard, we probably will have some staff lunches maybe on a day like today, but that's essentially the purpose of that side door.
You're not proposing to have any church events outdoors on that side yard, are you?
Yeah, not at this point. The only thing which we could do in the future, which we already have done on our property, is the Easter egg hunt once a year for the little kids. Our current yard that is now taken up by the new structure, we had an annual Easter egg hunt on that lawn. So that's a possible event, but that's the only thing that we would, have in mind.
Okay. Anything else we need to say about that change, Paul?
No.
You want to discuss the other two minor changes?
I discussed them already.
Oh, you already
Yeah.
did, I guess. No, I didn't know if you were going to provide additional testimony or just, so, that's it. That's all we have.
Questions from members of the board?
Pastor, hi. How many wells do you have there? When you decided to get the generator, was there an issue about water at that time, or like had this just come up? Can you just bring me up to date about the need for your ideas of going for the generator and stuff? Had things changed?
Yeah, we had originally designed one well, and then because we discovered basically an underground river flowing right into our property, we now have two wells with a double sump pump in each one. There's already been flooding, so we have a Home Depot grade sump pump in one of the pits, and that keeps up. That's the good news. But when it fails, we get water in the basement. So therefore, the construction manager says, make sure those pumps never fail, or you're going to get water, which we experienced. So that's the reason why we're seeking to have a generator, just to make sure those pumps never fail.
Will the generator unit be visible from any location?
It will not. It's a 28.6-inch high generator, and the parapet walls are 3 foot 6 inches in the front and 3 foot 10 inches in the front of the building and 3 foot 10 inches on the rear of the YMCA side. It will not be visible.
And what about from the neighbor to the north?
It will not be visible from the neighbor to the north.
The proposed block wall will be in the exact, other than it'll be effectively, just because of the nature of the construction, slightly further to the south. It'll be in the exact same location, length, et cetera, height.
Yes.
Everything will be the same as proposed, just a different material
Correct.
to use.
And it'll slope back as it gets higher. It'll be a maximum of 2 feet high, just as the original concrete wall was to be.
And then effectively, the way it's constructed, at its top, it will actually be slightly further from the property line.
Correct.
At the bottom.
Correct.
Other questions from members of the board? Mr. McCullough?
Just a clarification, so the area where you want to place the doors, yeah, the doors, help me to, remind me of what was in that section of the new building. Is that offices, or is that, I know there is a sort of a fellowship area?
It's a conference room.
It is a conference.
So that's why staff meetings could easily spill into a staff lunch.
I see. Are there like kitchen facilities in that section also?
No.
Okay, so there wouldn't be an issue of, if those doors are open, of food preparation and sort of smell
There's no kitchen.
flowing?
We're not going to be doing any cooking in that area.
Okay, all right.
Just, Mr. Sionis, did you look at having the stairs come out going towards North Willow Street, so they're not going out, kind of like in the middle of that lawn area?
We did not.
Is that something that's feasible?
Sure, we could, yeah, because we'd have the steps facing North Willow Street rather than coming out into the yard. It would actually give a bigger yard. That's not a problem.
Right. We were interested in having French doors on a nice
But
day,
that-
keep those doors open. So if you have stairs angled the other way, then you can't open the French doors. There's just no.
We'll still have a stoop. There'll still be a stoop. We'll come out the doors onto a stoop, and then the steps. So the steps could, that would work because it would make the yard more usable. No, there's no way.
So what you're doing is you're agreeing that you'll reorient the steps facing North Willow now, is that correct?
Or until the steps come down here. Or they could go to the rear. Either one. Right. In other words, the stoop is still here. Flat stoop.
Right. I mean, they already poured part of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Right. So they poured for the stoop. Yeah, so it's partially for the steps. So they partially poured for the steps, as in Grand Pedals.
I mean, I saw
Yeah.
that both live
Yeah.
and in the picture,
Yes.
but it's a little hard. Say you jumped the gun and that, but to some extent, I assume your neighbor is going to want to comment before. So
Right.
before you agree to anything, let's hear what he has to say, and then we'll go from there. Any other questions from members of the board? Okay. Are there any members of the public who also enjoy being here on a frequent occasion, I'm sure?
Also setting a record.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter pending before the board?
Yes, I do.
Would you state your name and address, please?
Dana Morgan, 25 North Willow Street.
Thank you.
Okay, this is round 3. We were last here in December. We talked about the air conditioning units mounted, multiple air conditioning units mounted on the building. Now we're throwing in the generator on the mix, which I don't understand what the critical need for that generator. You mentioned for sump pumps, but what is the kilowatts for the generator? You gave dimension size, but what is the kilowatt output for this generator? Do we have that information?
We do.
And also, can you share the noise level?
Yeah, it's 62 decibels at the generator.
So that's significant, that's not minor.
Well, at the generator, it's 62, but it's, as per the drawings, it's placed basically on the south side center of the roof. So it's pretty far from your property, pretty far from the northerly edge of this addition, as you can see from this.
gabled roof.
Yeah,
Right.
power outage in the neighborhood, and I've been in the area over more than 25 years, we never witnessed a power outage. Maybe a short blackout for a couple of seconds, that's about it. But if you're the generator, if you're probably the only facility in there with a generator and with the power outage, that will be extremely loud, regardless of what you have around it. We talked about the site lawn when we initially discussed the applicant, and we're talking about use of it, that it wouldn't be used for any activity. Now, we're coming back around again, talking about use of the side yard. The house is coming down, being teared down, and it's significantly impacting my quality of life. Now you want to have entertainment in the side yard, what we talked about previously, that this should not take place. I strongly disagree with it because I know it's coming. I witnessed the Easter egg thing they had last time. It was overwhelming. It's going to significantly impact my property. I strongly disagree with that, and I ask the board not to approve these two adjustments. Even with the steps are already done. The project is already probably more than 70% done with the steps. This is what's called out in December when we were here, talking about the mounted air conditioning, and I brought it to the attention saying, hey, what is this? But they went ahead and built the steps anyway. So the only thing needs to be done is to hang the doors up. So it's all on the construction team for moving ahead with putting the the carriage before the horse. So I can't support this, and I ask the board not to support this.
Any questions from members of the board? Okay, thank you.
Can I just briefly respond to those 2 points?
Okay. Let me first see just, I know it's a moot point, but are there any other members of the public? We do actually have two people over there who have any comments, testimony, or anything they want to say about the application. Okay, I think it's best to have a witness respond to what Mr. Morgan's comments.
Well, the generator issue involves a legal issue, which I'd like to respond to. But Paul, is there anything you want to say in response to the concern about the generator noise?
No, the generated noise is as I stated, it's a fairly low noise level. It's typical of an exterior air conditioning unit, but that's at the point of the generator, when the generator is on. And as you stated, this is hidden from the property owner to the north by that gable roof structure. It's surrounded by the parapet walls, but it's not even close to the parapet walls. It's basically in the center of the flat roof area. So,
are you familiar with the state regulations regulating the acceptable level of noise?
I can't quote it.
Decibels?
No.
Okay. All right.
Well, the emergency generators, while in operation during an emergency, are exempt from the noise regulations. They're not exempt during testing.
Okay.
So you'd have to comply with them during, periodic testing.
And the point that I wanted to make just on that is I'm very familiar with the noise regulations which apply throughout the state, and the permissible level of decibels at the property line is 65 decibels. That, I believe, applies throughout the state.
During daytime hours.
Okay.
Which means the testing has to be done in daytime
And
hours.
this is 62 decibels at the unit itself, which is located on the opposite.
Okay. We don't have any testimony as to what it would be at night. I mean, I'm going to condition it being tested during the day,
Okay.
during the daytime hours, because then it will be compliant and. Okay. You have anything further before we?
Well, the only thing I would say with respect to Mr. Morgan's concerns about the use of the site, I don't recall. There may be, but there's certainly no conditions that I'm aware of that limit the use of the 28-foot yard, side yard setback. And I don't recall there being any discussion that we could not use it at all. And the uses that are being proposed are much like a residential use with a picnic table for a group of people to go outside and have lunch. And we're not talking about a large number of people who work for the church. If I remember, it was less than a half a dozen perhaps. No different than a family going out and having, lunch outside on a nice day. And to have an Easter egg hunt, all right, there might be a lot more people, but again, an event similar to what a family might have, during Easter. And that's all the testimony that's been provided, and I don't think that's unreasonable. And again, not unlike a residential use. Not talking about putting up a tent and having outdoor, concerts or weddings or other church-related events.
Start discussion, Mr. Church.
I wasn't here for the original application. I understand that we're acting upon the installation, changing the original plan from installation to
I couldn't hear what you were saying, but there were three components that the applicant indicated. There's the steps into the side yard with the stoop.
Okay.
That was one. There's the generator on the.
Okay.
And then there was the changes to that wall adjacent to the property to the north.
I would have no objection except for the fact that the unit on the roof must be blocked from sight by all the neighbors that have sight lines to this church. Therefore, I would vote in favor of the changes that are requested.
Mr. Moore?
I'm also generally in favor of the applicant, but just like my colleague, I'd also like to piggyback on that if there's any type of shielding of, of excess noise or anything that you're able to possibly put around there, or just, see if there's something to mitigate, to not infringe. But I'm in favor.
Mr. Reynolds?
I'm generally in favor of the application. I think we have the conditions stated by my colleague.
Mr. Allen?
I too am generally in favor of the application.
Mr. McCulloch?
I have a couple of questions. One of them is whether or not there is an alternative location for the generator. I mean, does it have to be on the roof? Is there not a location on the far side of the building that could be on the ground level where the building itself would shield some of that potential excess noise? Because generators certainly can generate a lot of noise. So I'm wondering if that's something that has been considered. I'm also cognizant of the fact that, there's principally one neighbor who I think in our two previous hearings, raised a lot of concerns. And so, to me, that is the critical question in terms of the common good here. And so, the proposal to now use this side yard for staff lunches, Easter egg hunts, and it could be other things, just raises a question in terms of whether or not this is something that could have been thought out early on in the process. Because it certainly, the neighbor was really raising questions about privacy and so it certainly can feel like, there's an encroachment happening here. So I'd like to have as much assurance as possible that that's not the intent of the church, and that you really would restrict the use of this space so that the neighbor's privacy would not be interfered with unnecessarily.
Mr. Caulfield?
I'll piggyback on that as well. The neighbor has come, and it is 11 o'clock, and he has spoken to that. But I am in favor, and I do recognize your concerns there. I think for the Easter egg hunt, maybe site for another location or something. That you are part of the neighborhood, and you do have neighbors to kind of get along. But in general, I'm in favor.
Ms. Harris?
I'm in favor of the proposed revisions.
Mr. Simon?
I'm also in favor.
Mr. Affronti?
Just to echo Mr. McCullough's sentiments, and I'm wondering if there's some kind of condition or, other options for location of generator that we could entertain.
I'll do this sequentially. I have no issue with the change in the wall. That's not a problem at all. In terms of the generator, we, not very long ago, we had an extensive presentation on the air conditioning condensers proposed for the roof, which included addressing sounds, included as part of that going through alternate locations on the ground where the applicant demonstrated the roof was the best location. We imposed 6 conditions, or a total of 7 conditions, but 5 that directly relate to the air condition require that they adhere to the state municipal noise regulations, and that they be tested at time of installation to confirm that they do comply with applicable noise regulations, In this instance, since the emergency generator during emergencies is exempt, but it should be tested to verify that the 62 decibels or no more than 65 decibels is in fact being met. So I think if we make the generator subject to those conditions, then I mean, from day one, Mr. Morgan has been here expressing his concerns about the impact of this on his privacy, the noise impacts, et cetera. I'm comfortable, the generator realistically is going to run extremely infrequently. I mean, Mr. Morgan said power rarely goes out in the neighborhood, but, from my own personal experience, I sometimes, go out when it's a big storm, and that's the issue. Given the location right next to the stream, it's hardly a surprise that they have a water problem in their basement. But the stairs, I mean, this was something that was extensively discussed in terms of what is going to be the impact of the addition on particularly Mr. Morgan, and there were conditions imposed relating to that with the windows, et cetera, and what was going to be in that, in the addition adjoining that. Having said that, stairs, no stairs, they put a picnic table out there. I don't know, that's something I want to get in the business of regulating. They walk around from the front of the church, they have to walk longer, but that's, that I don't view as being any different than if this was just a house next door and they go out and, but I am concerned with, they're having events there. I don't, so what I think I would like to do, and we had, and I just don't, we never really addressed it in the prior approvals. There was some discussion over the fact that the church had traditionally had some events, but at that point was a much larger rear of the property. So I think what I'd like to do with that is to say that, and this is not going to entirely make Mr. Morgan happy, but that on no more than 4 occasions can they have events that would go beyond staff members, that those events start no earlier than 9:30 in the morning, and end no later than 6 o'clock at night, just to keep this during hours when people are normally awake, and to keep it so this is not something that's happening every week or even every month. But if they have things like the Easter egg hunt, I don't really want to say you can't do that. I mean, that just seems excessive. But on the other hand, I don't want, there is a whole part of me, given the frequency where the applicant has been back here, that when I saw the picture in Graham's memo, and then when I went to the property, that they just decided to start building the stairs going to the side yard, and it's not like you were here 5 years ago. That normally we've been tolerant, of people who start prematurely, but in a lot of those instances, it's been applicants who proceeded out of ignorance, but that can hardly be viewed as a circumstance here, where they've been here many times and know exactly what the plans were approved and know exactly what Mr. Morgan's concerns have been, and suddenly stairs appear on the side walking people towards Mr. Morgan's property. It's just, I have a whole problem with that, and given that the indication is those could have equally well been located going towards Willow Street, if they had not been there without a second thought, I would have said it's better for them because it's not cutting into the yard, so it's a mutually beneficial. So I think we should continue the conditions. Okay, so approval, I guess it's 2, modify the conditions of approval 1. So I think we're picking up all the conditions of, and let me just make sure I am doing this correctly. Yeah, okay, so the approval, just so we're calling them by correct names, the resolution dated October 25th, 2017, we're adhering to all those conditions. Condition 1 of that picks up the conditions of the September 27th, 2017 resolution, so those would be continued except as modified, and we'd have the conditions of the October 25th, and then also the conditions of the January 23rd, 2019, and those conditions would also apply to the generator as well as the condenser units that we approved in that application, and that the stairs from the addition go towards North Willis Street. Okay, any further discussion, and if not, would someone want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a quick comment about the emergency generator. Having been through Sandy and all kinds of things in this town, being on the fire department, now you're a church and you want to be a good neighbor. If you ever did have an extended blackout, hopefully your neighbor could plug up, save his refrigerated food and things like that. So there is a benefit to that kind of thing, and I've seen it in action. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Any other comments? And if not, can someone make a motion?
Move approval with the conditions stated by the chair.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We hopefully will not see you again on this application.
Need a motion to adjourn?
The stoop stairs.
You can tell Tom that it's going.
Yeah. So
they're bad.
Right, so this stairs.
With Jacqueline, she drew up.
I know. Yeah.
We should.